This episode of Dopey is brought to you by our friends at Oro Recovery, located in sunny Southern California, in Malibu and Silver Lake, and somewhere in Western Los Angeles. Oro was created by our friend Bob Forrest and his friends Evan, Jared, and Bob. Their mission: to create a facility that treats addicts and alcoholics with connection and compassion rather than control. They have decades and decades and decades of experience in treating co-occurring mental health disorders, including severe mental illness. They make sure that when you kick, your detox is as comfortable as possible, which is crucial when you're kicking fucking fentanyl or Oxycontin or heroin or crack or meth or whatever you're kicking. You want your kick to be as comfortable as possible. They have amenities you wouldn't believe: equine therapy, surfing, sound bath meditation, and of course, the potentially spiritually transformative sweat lodge. If you're fucked and you're looking to get better and you're willing to go to sunny Southern California to do it, I cannot suggest going to Oro enough. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our friends at SoberLink. As we all know, addiction is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. Nearly 15 million people in the U.S. have an alcohol use disorder, and that's just alcohol only, not other drugs. Only 10% of them get treatment. This can be attributed to the stigma that surrounds addiction and how people don't want to talk about it. SoberLink supports the no judgment zone that is Dopey and strives to erase the stigma of alcohol addiction. Their remote alcohol monitoring tool has helped over 500,000 people to be more accountable in their sobriety. Dopey was started with open and honest conversations about addiction and recovery, and SoberLink encourages this to help rebuild trust and maintain sobriety. Dopey has teamed up with SoberLink to create a healthy habits guide for those in recovery. You visit www.soberlink.com/dopey to download the healthy habits guide. And if you or someone you know can benefit from accountability for alcohol recovery, you'll also find a form on that page to sign up for $50 off, promo code exclusive to you guys in the Dopey Nation. So please go to soberlink.com/dopey and get the $50 off, and let SoberLink help you to stay off of the sauce. And thank you. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our very good friends at Sober Buddy, an amazing app that is totally available to you if you need some help getting or staying sober. It's the little blue fluffy guy you may have seen in sober memes on Instagram or Facebook. I love the Sober Buddy app. I really do. I've been using it because it not only gives you challenges that help you to get sober, it helps you think differently about your life. It has a sober tracker down to the second, daily check-ins that give you advice based on your mood, cute motivational memes, and helpful tips too. Over 60,000 people have already used Sober Buddy to help them get sober, and Sober Buddy's been featured in over 70 news stories and many episodes of Dopey. The Sober Buddy app is available in both the iTunes and Google Play stores, or you can check out their website at yoursoberbuddy.com. Check it out. It's actually a really amazing app. And before we get to the show, I want to tell you guys about a great recovery podcast called Recovery in the Middle Ages, a podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. Listen as they discuss current topics of interest to the recovery community, including 12-step alt recovery, the newest medical research, and talk about their daily struggle to maintain their recovery and anonymity in the world of soccer moms and PTA meetings. If the neighbors only knew. Find Recovery in the Middle Ages where you find all of your podcasts. I've been on it. A bunch of folks have been on it. It's a great podcast. Check it out. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. My name is Dave. Had a long, hard, sick week. I hope you guys are well. I have some disgusting chest cold, and I'm finishing up the show. And who calls me but my dad? So my dad's here. Welcome to the show, Dad.
Oh, hi. Hi, everybody.
If I want to feel better, all I have to do is ask my dad how he's doing. How are you doing, Dad?
Terrible, terrible. This knee pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. I'm seeing like four doctors next week. Dopey Nation. I'm going to come back though. I'm going to make a big recovery. At least that's what I'm hoping.
And do you think this is the first year that you're not going to have a Passover Seder?
Oh yeah, it's actually no. We missed COVID was last year also. We used to have wonderful, wonderful Seders. Really wonderful. It's not good. But tonight I'm having my solo one. You can tell the Dopey Nation gefilte fish and horseradish and different parts of the Seder plate I'm going to have, which is mixed nuts, wine, and apples put together with a horseradish on top of it on a piece of matzah.
That's your haroset?
Yeah, that's it. That's haroset. Yeah.
All right. Well, good for you.
Anyway,
way to carry the torch.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go in, but I got sick, and now Nora's sick, and Susan's sick, and it's a mess. And you saw this week that Gilbert Gottfried died.
Yeah, I did. I didn't see that. Yes, I did. That's a terrible, terrible tragedy. Yes.
Did you? I know that. Did you see him around the neighborhood ever?
The answer is yes, I did. I think he lived really close by.
I think he lived in Penn South.
I think you're right. At some point he did. And then he moved somewhere in Chelsea, somewhere else after he got married.
Yeah, I remember I used to see him all the time, and I would shout his name. And one of my friends actually wrote me that they remember being with me one time, and Gilbert was walking down the street, and I yelled something to him, and he thanked me and shook my hand. In my memory, Gilbert always hated when I screamed his name, and Mom always hated Gilbert Gottfried.
She did?
She always hated his voice.
Oh yeah. The voice is very nasal voice. Yeah, but obviously that was his shtick. He put that on.
And he famously performed at Katz's 125th anniversary, and you were there.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. That I think you mentioned it in one of your comments on Twitter or something.
It was an Instagram post. My dad doesn't know the difference between a comment, an email, a review, nothing. It was an Instagram post and a Facebook post. Yes.
Yeah, right. Whatever it was. So he was standing in front of the big crowd at Katz's. And he made this joke, which of course is not a very funny joke, but from him it was funny. So he stood up there and he said that Katz's restaurant has killed more Jews than Hitler, and everybody laughed, but of course it's not that funny. But,
Did I ever tell you the follow up to that story?
No, what?
So they pay him, right? They pay him to.
Oh yeah. He was supposed to get free food forever or something.
They pay him at the store with cash, and they give him a card that says he eats for free for life. Yeah. And so the next week he comes to the store and he eats. I think he brings his kids in and his wife in, and he eats, and he goes out to the cashier, and she doesn't honor the card. And he lost his mind, and he left. And then in the time where I was kind of stalking Artie Lang, I would bring Artie sandwiches to this podcast network called Compound Media in around 30th Street, and I would go there with a Katz's bag. And one time I went there, and Gilbert Gottfried and his wife were there because he was going to go on Artie's show. And I told him that was big misunderstanding. We wanted to clear the air, and they were so annoyed with the whole thing. But to me, it was so funny that he wanted free Katz. I mean, like, that's the worst thing, because he's a professional schnurrer and he gets what he wants, but then they still don't honor the card. Right. Yeah. Well, so it never got rectified, right? No, it never got rectified. And I tried to fix it, and it never got fixed.
Yeah, well, he survived. He survived without Katz's, I guess. That's for sure.
And then another thing is that he was amazing on the Howard Stern show over the years. Howard did a little memorial of Gilbert, a much more in-depth memorial than this one. And Gilbert had gone on the Howard Stern show 150 times or something. And but he hadn't been on in 20 years. Okay. And Gilbert would do like imitations. He would do Groucho Marx, but as a senile old man, or he'd do Jewish Dracula, or he would do Jerry Seinfeld. He was ridiculously funny on the Stern Show, but Howard never explains why he never had Gilbert back for 20 years or something.
Did he explain it now?
No, he didn't explain it. A guest, like a listener called in, and Howard said, "I'll explain it next week." But this is the great mystery on the Howard Stern Show. It's like when Artie, like Gilbert went out when Artie like tried to kill himself, and we don't have an answer, and it makes me think like Howard never had Gilbert back on. Will Howard ever have Artie back on, or does it just not matter? You know, does it just not matter? I don't know.
Well, it certainly does not matter to me, but I guess you guys are fans of this guy, so you're very, very curious. But did you read where he gave what I think that a comedian that was on the podcast $500,000 thanking him for being on his show?
No, that's so funny. That's so funny. It was that was Jackie the Joke Man Martling, and I was so stupid. It was April 1st. He tweeted that Howard gave him $500,000. It took me like 2 hours to realize it was an April Fool's joke. That's how swift I am. But it does matter. It does matter to me, though. It does matter to me because, like, as an audience member, I'm just a sucker for those old school relationships, and I'm sad. I'm sad that Gilbert Gottfried's gone. It just shows the impermanence of life, which is something you're becoming all too familiar with, right?
Yeah, I'm getting to be way too familiar with it. Yes.
Oh, you know what, Howie? You know Howie from YouTube? He sent me a link, a live feed to Gilbert's funeral, right? And and it was a bunch of pretty famous comedians, like remembering how notoriously cheap Gilbert Gottfried was. Like one time they were driving back from a gig in New Jersey, and the driver of the car wanted Gilbert to pay the toll. And back then the toll was $3. So he goes into his wallet and he takes out each dollar at a time and he kisses them and he's like, "So long, boys," and he gives them to the driver. Like but it was like also the guy who ran the funeral was this very famous comedian called Jeff Ross, who's like a big comic roaster guy. Another like classic Katz's guy, always at Katz's. Yeah. And he had the whole funeral sing Sunrise Sunset, which is very pretty.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. I'm just changing the subject. You know, this horrible thing on the subway, this guy who shot so many people. It was reported in the paper that this guy stopped at Katz's the day he was arrested.
I know. It's classic.
Is that weird?
It's just he chose. It's ridiculous. You know, the whole thing is ridiculous. It's not surprising. Everybody loves to eat at Katz's. So I have to tell everyone to sign up and listen and watch Patreon. Go sign up for Patreon. Help support Dopey. There's so much material on Patreon. You signed up for Patreon, right, Dad?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big time payer. Yes.
Do you think you're getting your money's worth? Don't answer that slowly. Answer it slowly.
Yes, I am getting my money's worth. As a matter of fact, I think I'm behind and listening to some of the stuff that I haven't gotten to yet.
We actually put up some never before seen footage from the Katz's 125th anniversary today. So you should watch that. I think you'll think it's very funny. When they had the pastrami eating contest. Also, I'm just going to breeze through this stuff. Are you subscribed to Dopey YouTube, Dad?
I watch it. I think, you know what? I think I did. Yes, I think I did subscribe. Yes.
So please, everybody, subscribe to Dopey YouTube, join Dopey Patreon, and buy the candles. We have nice candles. Dad, did you get the candles?
I got 5 of them.
Do you like them?
Yeah, no, they're terrific.
Do you think do you think we should do a Dopey Yortzeit candle, or is that just too much?
No good. Sorry. That's too sad.
All right. Well, if you want a Dopey candle, you go to northavcandles.com/collections/Dopey. They smell really good. They're very high quality candles. And Dad, You always have some horrible stuff to talk about on the show. So what is your criticism this week?
Well, actually, it's going to be apropos now because you said Yorkside candles, but most of the Dopey Nation may not understand that. It's candles that you light in mourning for people who have died. That's the Yorkside candle. And that's pretty much my criticism. You had Mackenzie Phillips on, which was terrific. I mean, she's such an incredible actor and a life that she led. And then she was telling these personal story names like Valerie Bertinelli's husband, Tom, and somebody named Wolfie. I have no idea who these people are.
Eddie Van Halen.
So, in other words, the Dopey
Valerie
Nation,
Bertinelli was married to a guitar player named Eddie Van Halen, who was, some people think was the greatest guitar player who ever lived. You know who Eddie Van Halen was, don't you, Dad?
Well, I know the name. And what about this Wolfie name?
That's Eddie Van Halen's son.
So in other words, I'm helping out the rest of the Dopey Nation who didn't know that. That's good. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you're doing something good for the show, and I'm sure you are. I'm sure there's a lot of people get a lot out of these segments with you, Dad. But who's Tom? What are you talking about?
I thought she mentioned that in conjunction with Valerie Bertinelli.
Okay, but now you're clear that it was Eddie Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen's son Wolfie, right?
I see. Right. Okay.
All right. Now, more importantly, this episode of Dopey is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens is this company that makes this amazing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens in this one scoop of something called AG1. Now, this is a real sponsor, Dad. I've been using this stuff I think for 15 days in a row. It comes in super high quality packaging. It's delicious. It's lifestyle friendly, Dad. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free.
I mean, all those things that I don't eat.
You take a multivitamin, right?
No.
Well, maybe you should. Maybe you should stop ruining this ad and be quiet and listen to this amazing product called AG1 by Athletic Greens. It costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health, which is cheaper than a lot of coffee places, a lot of caramel macchiatos. It was created when its founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine, which cost him $100 a day. He created this. AG donated 1.2 million meals to kids in 2020. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews, and it's trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. I actually like it. And to make it, I actually like taking Athletic Greens. I feel like I'm healthy. It tastes good. It makes me feel good. It helps my digestion in a nice way. I think it's helped me get through this ailment quickly. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/dopey. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/dopey. Take ownership over your health and pick up the daily nutritional insurance. Doesn't that sound good, Dad? Really big-time stuff?
Yeah, it sounds terrific.
I think it comes from Australia or New Zealand, too. Really nice quality packaging.
So, and they ship it directly to you?
They ship it to you, but check it out. They ship it to you in this big pouch of powder, and then these little pouches that I didn't realize were travel pouches. I thought that was what they shipped me. So I used those first, and then you mix it in this bottle, and it comes with this cap, and you shake it up, right? Yeah. And I lost the cap to the bottle a few days later, and then the dog vomited up the cap to the bottle. The dog ate the bottle cap, so that's gone. So now I mix it in one of Susan's little cups and shake it. But I like it, and we like the dog. Are you excited to meet the dog?
He looks very cute, yeah. Very cute. But again, it's another responsibility that the family has to take care of.
Oh, Jesus. What do you think? What do you think? We're going to count on you to come up and walk the dog?
I can't even walk myself.
Right. So you're out. You're not planning on dog sitting anytime soon. Puppy sitting.
Well, the answer is no. But if I ever got healthy, and if Winnie approves of me, then maybe, because I could have a dog here actually, if I in the apartment. So, but
I think you'll like the dog. I
What?
think you'll like the dog. I like this dog more than any pet I've ever had.
Well, more than the turtle.
More than what? Oh yeah, more than the turtle. More than the turtle.
Well, all right, that's saying a lot.
And of course, Dopey Nation, my dad is referring to this turtle that we had when I was a kid, that you have to feed the turtle meat. I think we'd mostly feed it turkey meat and hamburger meat, and the excrement of the turtle was so foul that my mother didn't want him in the apartment anymore, so we set the turtle free at one of the lakes in Central Park.
And ancestors of that turtle are still going around. He may still be alive too.
It's possible.
Central Park has wonderful turtles.
Do you have anything else that you want to share with the Dopey Nation before we move on?
Well, nobody's writing a review.
So no more. I've noticed that. But it also means that there are so much less 1-star reviews.
Well, I don't even want to talk about the 1-star reviews.
You saw that what's his face? Jesus Christ, I can't even remember his name.
Joey Pepper.
Joey Pepper fucking took his 1-star review down.
He did.
It's gone.
It's about time.
I think the guilt finally got to Joey Pepper. So listen, go to iTunes, leave a review. A 5-star review would be nice. My dad does nothing all day. His fantasy basketball is over. What position did you finish in, Dad?
It turns out that after a horrible season where my first 3 picks were injured the whole year, I came in 4th place, beating guess who?
Nicholas.
No.
Seymour. Me. I haven't even done it. I'm not even in the league. I don't count.
You came in 5th, and David Blank came in 6th.
Wow, so I came in 5th, huh?
You came in 5th ahead of the world famous Blank family. You came in 5th. David came in 6th. So I beat one Blank and you.
My whole team was on auto pick. This is not show my performance.
Not a bad idea.
Next year, I might rejoin your cockamamie league next year, but hopefully not.
Well, I hope you do. Absolutely.
At the beginning of the show, we played some music from an old school Dopey listener who goes by the name Klerbenstein or Stein. And that was his electronic take on an old Dopey theme song that my friend John made years ago. And he has a record coming out next week. And when I get the link next week, I'll mention it and I'll play you the full electronic dance music version. It was actually, ironically, his submission to the old Dopey podcast theme song challenge from so many years ago, where Joey Pepper entered that contest too.
Wow. Yeah. No, the music makes the show so much better. It's terrific.
All right. Well, that's good. So you support Klerbenstein in all of his endeavors?
I didn't hear it, but I will listen to it. And I support all of the Dopey Nation sending him music. It's terrific.
Okay, good.
It really is.
Now, we're in this partnership with Sober Buddy.
Yes.
And Sober Buddy is an app that helps you stay sober. And we had been advertising them for a long time, but I never used the app. And I've started using the app, and they have all these challenges, right?
Yeah.
And you heard the buy a stranger a cup of coffee challenge, I think.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
You should buy a stranger a cup of coffee, or maybe a loved one a cup of coffee. But I don't know. I think that guy Klerbenstein made me realize that I could do a Sober Buddy challenge about the Dopey Nation. So that was my idea, and the challenge was appreciate. This is what it says. It says appreciation, and again, Sober Buddy is this app, and it has challenges that help you kind of remind you of why you get sober in the first place. And this thing says appreciation is, and there's a quote from Voltaire, Dad. You know Voltaire?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. Can you imagine getting a letter praising and appreciating you for making a big difference in their life? take a moment to write a letter of appreciation to express how much someone has impacted your life. So that's what I decided to do. And I didn't realize you were going to be on the show, or I would have written the letter to you, Dad.
Really?
Yep.
Yes.
Dear Dad, thank you for turning me into a heroin addict. Love, David.
Don't do that.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I will write, I think hopefully before it's over, you will get the next Sober Buddy appreciation letter, Dad.
Okay.
But for now, I wrote a letter to the Dopey Nation. You want to hear it?
Yes. Okay.
All right, here we go. Dear Dopey Nation, this is my letter to someone who has had a positive effect on my life. It's you guys in the Dopey Nation. What a long, strange trip it's been. So long and so strange, it is almost unbelievable to me that any of you guys from the very beginning are still around now. But I know that some of you are. Randy, Misty, Tina. To be honest, I struggle figuring out who is still with us, who has stopped listening, and who has died, which is a sad truth when dealing with our shared affliction of addiction. You guys have had such an important effect on me and on Dopey. By listening to the show, you created the show. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? Well, if you guys hadn't listened to Dopey, would Dopey be anything at all? And almost more importantly, by sharing your own crazy stories with us, providing shared experiences from all over the world. And whether it was Maurice in Australia telling the story of finding the dead body in the phone booth, or Hot Wheels with the DMT, or my dad criticizing the show, or the woman who wrote the 1-star review that criticized my dad's white privilege and his opulent apartment and lake house. Or it was Tina saying that she didn't know if she wanted to stay sober. Or Jake from West Virginia singing his version of Good So Bad that everyone loves so much more than mine from his basement. Or talking with Chris's family about the loss of their son and our dear friend and Dopey co-founder. Or Fentanyl J, who admitted recently his colossal misdeeds and staring down a potentially very long and painful prison sentence. Your truth has always had an unbelievable effect on me and an even bigger effect on Dopey. I am most grateful to the Dopey Nation itself for being kind to each other. Obviously not always kind. Sometimes you guys are mean, but families don't always agree and families don't always get along. Sometimes families fight. In peace or at war, the Dopey Nation has always been an amazing watering hole for freaks and weirdos, addicts and alcoholics, as well as their normie loved ones to coexist in and get to know each other and try to understand each other. I am so grateful to you guys for populating our watering hole and for being you. My gratitude to you guys is endless. I love you and thank you for being a part of our Dopey community. Your guys' impact on me has been more than positive. It's been life-changing. Love, Dave. What do you think, Dad?
Terrific. Very, very good.
Right. Do you think the Dopey Nation has impacted your life in a positive way too?
Absolutely. I fell all the time how something like this could even exist, and it happened because of you and Chris, and you're pushing it forward, which is wonderful.
Well, my dad recently called me the Elon Musk of addiction podcasts, so that was good.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
Did you ever go to Dopey Zoom, Dad?
No. I was tempted a few times to do it, but
so why didn't you go?
I thought it would. I don't know. I didn't want to create a scene or anything like that. I'd rather be my anonymous self back here, where I enjoy what everybody else is doing.
The fly on the wall.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The old Jewish fly on the wall. Here we go. Did you know that there's over 25 meetings a week in Dopey Zoom, that it's 100% free? They do AA, NA, Dharma, whatever. They do it all, Dad. Did you know that?
I did. I certainly do know that. Yeah, it's fantastic. It really is fantastic.
They do marathons and talent shows and all this stuff. The Zoom ID is always 804-300-586. The password is always Toodles in lowercase. I just suggested the Dopey Zoom to a Dopey Nation listener. Go to Dopey Zoom if you're having trouble connecting. Dad, maybe you should go. What do you think?
No, listen, I think it's a great resource. That's one of the great things about Dopey and the Dopey Nation, is that everybody is providing this help for everybody. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so maybe they can have help for arthritis. Maybe I can get.
You
some
should
advice.
go to the Dopey Zoom and get some support. And at the last Saturday of the month, if you're in Dopey Patreon, you should come to the Dopey Patreon Zoom. Even you, Dad. It's a lot of fun. We're going to be playing games, giving away prizes, lots of fun stuff.
That's the last Saturday of the month.
9:30, yes. We have a really, really, really wild guest today, Dad. Do you know what Bicycle Day is?
Bicycle Day?
Yes.
No.
April 19th is Bicycle Day, and they're celebrating that on April 19th in 1943, the Swiss father of psychedelic medicine, do you know his name?
No.
Dr. Albert Hofmann dropped lysergic acid diethylamide at 4:20 p.m. Do you know why that's funny that he did it at 4:20 p.m.?
Have no idea.
Because
Why is that
4:20 is the universal stoner time, the time that stoners get high, and now April 20th is the big weed holiday. But Bicycle Day is April 19th, and it's the big acid holiday. And our guest today is a former acid dealer, an author, a filmmaker, an outlaw, and a celebrant of Bicycle Day. His name is Seth Ferranti. You excited to hear him on the show?
Well, we'll see. It doesn't sound like so great to me, but we'll see. Yes.
He served his time. He's an author. He's an outlaw filmmaker. I mean, a lot of people get a lot out of psychedelics, Dad. Just you didn't get a lot out of psychedelics. You didn't drop acid and ride your bike around Manhattan or Flushing Meadows back in the day.
No.
You never took liquid LSD in your eyes and went to the old World's Fair site in Queens.
No.
You never ate mescaline and went to the old Corona King of Ice and had ices tripping out with Paul Simon.
I did have rum raisin ices at Corona, which is terrific.
But not with Paul Simon and not on mescaline?
Well, he was not in Corona that day when I went.
And no mescaline?
No.
All right, enough. Before we get to Seth Ferranti, I need to tell everybody, including you, Dad, that this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. As you know, life can be overwhelming, and many people are burned out without even knowing it. I think that definitely describes you. Symptoms can include lack of motivation, feeling helpless or trapped, detachment, fatigue, or more.
Keep doing the
BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Dopey listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/dopeypodcast. That's BETTERHELP.com/dopeypodcast. And I know you don't, my dad is really old fashioned. You don't believe in therapy, right, Dad?
Well, I did after Mommy died. I was told to go, so I did.
I think you need therapy now. I'll tell you this. I've been doing therapy since January, and a lot of it has been online therapy, and it's been amazingly helpful.
Well, that's good. Listen, I'm not going to turn any help down, but right now I have to get my pain level lower.
Okay.
So
all right. Just have they prescribed you any painkillers for this thing?
Oh, yeah, they have. Yes.
What are you taking? What's in the house right now?
I'm not telling you.
What do they give you?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm taking Tylenol PM.
They gave you oxycodone?
Yes, they did.
Hydrocodone?
No.
Hydromorphone?
No.
Dilaudid?
No.
Fentanyl lollipops?
No, but during the surgery, I think part of the anesthesia was something with fentanyl in it.
I think you should get therapy. I think everyone should get therapy and get it at BetterHelp and get 10% off the first month at BETTERHELP.com/dopeypodcast. Thank you for coming on the show again, Dad.
You're quite welcome, and I hope you feel better, and I hope you guys can come and see me next week.
And and what about you? You should, that the Dopey Nation isn't going to come and see you next week. You can tell me that off the show. On the show, you talk to the Dopey Nation.
Oh well, all right. Dopey Nation. I meant David's family to come.
Yes. They think they're going to come see you next week, Dad.
Well, with DopeyCon, whatever.
DopeyCon 3. I was on the phone with Mountainside today. We might do it at Mountainside again, September 24th. Put it in your calendar, Dad.
Well, that's common to me. See, that's the neighborhood.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So here we go. Thank you, Dad. You want to say goodbye to the Dopey Nation before we move on to our next guest?
Yes. Goodbye, Dopey Nation. Everybody stay well, healthy, and toodles for Chris.
All right. Thanks, Dad. And here we go. Seth Ferranti. But before we get to Seth Ferranti, I forgot to tell the Dopey Nation about all of our incredible Dopey merchandise. You go to dopeypodcast.com. There's so much nice clothing on there. There's the Good So Bad shirt, the Big Bird shirt, the King Baby shirt, the new hoodie. Dad, you wear Dopey merch all the time, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got my hat, I got my beanie, I got my Dopey sweatshirt.
Right.
And yeah, and I think, well, you left a bunch of hats here. I don't know how they get those.
Yeah, if you guys want any of the snapbacks, we're about to put out Big Bird snapbacks. Those are going to be nice. If you want a Big Bird beanie or a Big Bird snapback, just write me on Instagram and I will send it out to you. We got new stickers, new buttons, all sorts of shit. We are in a beautiful partnership with a printing company out of Cincinnati, Ohio called SRO Prints. If you need a printing company, contact them at sroprints.com. And all right, thanks, Dad. One more time.
All righty. Okay.
Here's Seth Ferranti. If you're watching, we're in the Dopey studio, and I have a very, very, very interesting, exciting guest on the show. His name is Seth Ferranti. Welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, what's up, man? We've been going back and forth for a while, man. I'm glad to finally be on here.
Long time going back and forth, and Seth is a writer, a producer, an outlaw, an ex-con, a contributor to the Huffington Post, Vice, fucking Bicycle Day enthusiast, LSD advocate, perhaps. Welcome. I'm glad to see you, man. I've been studying a bunch of your shit, and it's very impressive. Like, holy cow! And your story is insane. I want to start with tell us about Gorilla Convict before you say anything else.
Yeah, so Gorilla Convict is the publishing house and kind of the website platform that I formed in 2005 while I was in prison serving a 25-year sentence. It was kind of like, I kind of styled it back then, like the voice of the convict. I just saw, like with my own case too, I saw a lot of stuff, that the mainstream media only reports stuff a certain way, and they kind of pigeonhole or stereotype people, and they did it to me, and they were doing it to a lot of others. And some people, are criminals, some people are just hustlers, entrepreneurs, and so I just want to kind of give a voice, to these people that were being incarcerated, due to the war on drugs. Because, when you go into prison, like I did at a young age, you watch all the movies and you think, oh, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. But really, over 75% of the people I met in there are pretty much, regular people. They just got involved in the wrong things or were forced into bad situations, be it with addiction, drugs, crime, violence. So I just wanted to, there's a lot of gray area in life. It's all not always black and white as the mainstream media or as federal prosecutors or, law enforcement will make it seem. So I kind of wanted to give a voice to that. But for me, it was also, I had a long time to do. I was looking for a career for myself. I was looking for a future. I've always been very forward thinking. So I was like, what can I do in here that's going to help me when I get out? Because I got to do all this, multiple decades of prison. So, I kind of came up with the idea, like I can be a writer, from here. So it was kind of me reaching out to the world, and trying, to get my voice heard and trying to be recognized.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And it reminds me a little bit of Dopey in that, like, I always knew that the story of addiction is entertaining. You know what I mean? Like we tend to help people, because it's a shared experience. But I knew that the stories themselves were entertaining. Like you knew when you, like I read a bit about you and I heard you on a bunch of things where you were already kind of in the world of reading about living off the grid or being a fugitive or reading stuff, like that must have been like right there for you when it came to you, like, this is entertaining shit, right?
Oh no, definitely. You know, I've always been a very avid reader, and I've always been drawn to kind of the counterculture, outlaw lifestyle. You know, I was a big fan of like you know, Hunter S. Thompson's, you know, one of my heroes, you know, Henry Rollins, Jim Morrison, even, you know, like Axl Rose. So I was already really attracted, you know, to that kind of life. So you know, and like, I mean, it's crazy when you're in prison, you know, and you're with all these people from all these different areas, especially the feds. You just have, like, as a writer, you have all these incredible sources. It's like, oh, like I'm doing a story on you know, the Supreme Team from New York. You know, I can just, like, if I need some different quotes or some different color for the piece, there's like a whole bunch of dudes from Queens right there. I can go right down and talk to them, and they know the people I'm writing about. You know, they know the legends, they know the myths. So, you know, it was, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, but looking back, you know, as a writer doing true crime stuff and gangster stuff, it was very convenient to be in prison because I was around a lot of criminals and I was around a lot of gangsters.
But that's optimism, you know, to say it's convenient to be in prison at any second. And you did 21 years. So for you to sit here, sip your coffee or tea and talk about the convenience of being in prison, I know you're an optimist. That's like a great, well, I mean, are you kidding?
I mean, but that's in retrospect, you know, that's in retrospect,
right? You
know, and it's plus if you get older, you look at things, you know, I always tell people, for me, I don't think I'm like the most talented at anything, like writer, producer, director, storyteller, whatever. You know, I'm pretty good at a lot of things. I'm pretty versatile, but I always tell people, like, my number one attribute is I'm relentless.
Yeah, me too.
You know, like when I set an objective, like I go for it. Like, I'm a man of action. I do it. You know, and even like whatever I do to the best of my ability at that time. You know, sometimes, you know, I look back at some of my original writings and I'm like, oh, you know, maybe I kind of cringe. But, you know, that's after like, you know, 20, 25 years experience of doing this. So, you know, that's what I always tell people, man. Just, you know, if you see something you want, I mean, you just got to do it. You just got to go get it. Make it happen.
You got to go do it. And once you start doing it, you got to keep doing it. Now, one question that I haven't had answered in my research about you is, do you consider yourself a drug addict?
You know, I've had times, you know, because like when you go to prison, I mean, I went to prison. I was, you know, I caught my case when I was 20. You know, they caught me when I was 22, and I went in and I got 25 years. So, you know, as a young man, I had all these ideals, you know, like I was really ahead of the times because, you know, I always tell people I never consider myself a criminal. I consider myself an outlaw because I broke laws that were wrong. So, you know, I was standing up for cannabis and psychedelics, you know, in the late 80s, like when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, I was like, you know, this stuff should be legal, you know. So, but when you get that sentence and you get thrown in it and they throw all that stuff on you, like, you know, oh, you're wrong, you know, you're a drug addict, that's why, you know, you did this stuff, and they kind of try to put you in this box, you know, and they want, oh, you got to get help, or you got to go to AA or NA. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying any of that stuff is wrong. Everybody has to do what's right for them. So, you know, I've gone through times where I have considered myself, you know, a drug addict, and I've gone through times, you know, where I don't. But I can say even to this day, I'm an extreme person. Like my favorite drug, you know, I never got into like heroin and coke, meth, stuff like that. I've always been a weed and psychedelics dude. And still to this day, like just recently, you know, I got to really watch myself because I love cannabis. You know, I'm the type of dude, like, I like to wake up, I like to wake and bake, I like to smoke cannabis 24/7. You know, and nowadays with the potencies they have and the other stuff, like I got, you know, like probably about a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, I got like really into concentrates and dabbing in like rosin and stuff like that. And I became like a dab head for like 9 months. Like I was literally, like I was getting up smoking like 75, 85%, you know, concentrate THC, like all day, every morning. Like I couldn't even smoke weed. It wouldn't get me high. You know, I do the concentrates. And, you know, after 9 months of that, I mean, I was kind of zombified, and my wife is kind of looking at me, you know, being like, you know, like, what are you doing? And, you know, like anybody who's artistic, you know, when you start abusing drugs, you know, because maybe stuff is not going your way, or, you know, maybe you're not getting the deals you want, or maybe, you know, people are not giving the attention, you know, to your work that you want or that you need, you know, the recognition. So I actually stopped. I stopped smoking weed for like 10 months.
So you're off,
you know, just
weed
because.
now?
Well, actually, I started again. See, this is weird. So this is like that addiction thing. So it's like, you know, am I addict or am I just an extreme personality? You know, because for me, it's not like, you know, I'm smoking weed and I'm going to be destitute and I'm going to be on the street like someone can get, you know, like on heroin or some of those harder drugs. You know, it takes you down those rabbit holes where your whole life just gets fucked up. You know, so I mean, I've been able, you know, to maintain, you know, my lifestyle and work. Even like I tell people, even as a stoner, I'm a super prolific stoner, right? A super productive stoner compared to most people. But I found out, like, when I leave the weed alone, or especially the dabs, I mean, I'm much more prolific. Like my most productive periods in life have been when I've been totally sober.
Right.
You know, so
right.
sometimes, you know, that works for me. So sometimes I got to go back for that. So even recently, so I didn't smoke weed for 10 months because I had like a vicious 9-month dab run where I was like, you know, like a fucking zombie.
The shit is hard. The dab is like, I'm a ridiculous stoner. I was a ridiculous stoner. And I would smoke Shattered whenever I could get it. I would smoke whatever. Like I lived in New York and it was pre, you know, all this shit when I was smoking. You know, I stopped smoking weed like 7 years ago or something. So that's when all these concentrates were starting to really show up. And I took a hit. I was dabbing with a kid at work, and I swear to God, I felt like I was like on heroin or acid. And I was walking home. I was like, I cannot believe how fucking high I am. It was shocking. Anyway, back to your story.
No, my wife used to come in sometime. Like she would come home, you know, because I'm a writer. So, you know, I'm a writer. You know, I make films. I just work from home, you know, or wherever I'm at. But like my wife would come home from work sometime. You know, she was working as a legal assistant, and she, like, I would be so high on the dabs, like after dabbing like all day long, like she would look at me. She would think like I'm on some type of heavy narcotic. She's like, you know, she would ask me like, are you doing oxys? Right. You know, because that's how like fucked up I was. So, you know, like I said, I stopped for 10 months and then I started smoking weed and I told myself, okay, I'm not going to dab. I'm just going to like smoke some good sativa, you know, like working weed or whatever.
Sure.
You know, and, but then like a month, I'm doing the dabs again. So I smoked dabs for like, and actually just like a week ago, I kind of checked myself and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go on another 9-month dab run. So I stopped, you know, so I just have to realize like my limitations, you know, I mean, if I got $10 million in the bank, you know, whatever, a couple $1 million, you know, and I got a lot of stuff going and I'm just trying to maintain it and I want to get blasted out of my head all day on dabs, you know, I can do that. But I've kind of come to the realization that it's almost like when I want to do that, I got to set aside time. Like I got to be like, okay, for these 2 weeks, I'm just going to get blasted out of my head. You know, so I don't know. So I think I kind of straddle that whole addiction thing because I don't like the addiction thing because that's what they try to put on me and that's what they try to blame for my whole case and everything. And I kind of feel justified now because weed is legal and psychedelics, you know, are being looked at, you know, and studied. So, you know, I feel really justified, you know, and I feel like they were trying to label me and put me in a box and saying when I was wrong, when even as a 17-year-old man, I felt like I was right. You know, now looking back, I feel really justified. But at the same time, I'm an extreme person. I'm an extreme personality. And anything you do too much, even if it's exercise,
right,
is a problem for you. And I have like that. I like a lot of people who become addicts or who people would say are addicts. I have that, you know, that pendulum. I swing just back and forth, like whatever it is in my makeup, you know, I swing back and forth. But, you know, being that person and having that chemistry of whoever I am, it allows me, you know, to reach the heights, you know, that I'm reaching now. And, you know, you know, I feel like I'm rising, I'm going to go higher. So it's just something I got to manage. You know, I don't always like to label, you know, stuff an addict. Cause I think even somebody like if you're hardcore on heroin or something, just, I mean, labeling somebody like an addict, it's dehumanizing. You know, it makes them like people say somebody's an addict, so it's like, okay, you can just discount them as a person. They're an addict. They fucked up. Just leave them in the fucking gutter. And I hate that. So that's why, I don't really use that term. But yeah, I at some points in my life, I can say, that I've abused drugs, and like I say, I love marijuana. So, if I'm addicted to marijuana, I'm addicted to marijuana. But I'm old enough now where, I got some semblance of control.
Well,
at least I think so.
The best thing about an addict, for my money, is an addict decides if they're an addict or not. Like, I'm not deciding if you're an addict. I know that I'm an addict. And I know that I'm an addict because usually if I put a mood or mind altering substance into my body, I wind up not being able to do anything I want. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that you can do 9 months of dabbing and be like, that was too much, I'm not going to do that. Chances are you're not an addict. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take the chance. I lost too much of my life to fucking heroin and I have kids, and I don't want to put myself in a situation where I add something to the mix. Like, maybe I can smoke weed and hang out and listen to the Allman Brothers and stuff, but maybe I can't, and I don't want to take that fucking risk. Now, I know that you grew up as a military kid. I never like to say army brat. I don't know why everyone feels so comfortable to say army brat. I'm going to say a military kid. And you're going from spot to spot, and you started... you fell in love with weed in England? Is that the deal?
Well, actually, San Jose first. So, I was in San Jose, but then shortly after I started smoking weed, like at the age of 13 in San Jose, I moved to England. And then when I went to England, like, it was all like the old school European hash. Like, they didn't even have weed over there, 'cause it was all the hash coming from like the Middle East, Afghanistan and stuff.
Because they could move that around easier, right? They can move the hash, and they can't move the volume of bud. Because they could compress the hash, and that's why, right?
Yeah, so I went, I went right from smoking, because early California, like in the early 80s, I mean, they were getting really good weed. The Mexican brick pot didn't start coming until probably, like the mid 80s. But, like the early 80s, I was smoking like Thai sticks, like Maui Wowie, Colombian Gold. They were bringing in really, really good weed. And I went right from that to England to smoking just Lebanese Gold, like Black Moroccan, just really, really good hash. And that kind of started my love affair, with this, with this plant that has, and like, as I say, because of the laws of our country, in the drug war, it's been, it's been a detriment, but also at the same time, I feel it's been a benefit to me in a lot of ways too.
Oh man, weed like saved my life in so many ways. Let me ask you a question though, a stupid question. Are you prepared for a stupid question? There was a moment of my life, right, where I was buying my bud in Central Park in New York City, and there was a kid who sold Thai stick, but we all called it chocolate Thai, right? And we had this idea in our head that it was actually chocolatey. Has there ever been an actual chocolate Thai that tasted a little bit chocolatey?
Yeah, I think so. I used to remember people calling it chocolate Thai. So I don't know. I don't know if it was marketing or whatever back then, but no, I do recall, people talking about chocolate Thai. I can't remember like a specific time, I smoked it where I thought like, oh, this tastes like chocolate. But, I do remember that. And, that brings up another thing, with that chocolate thing, like in the marketing of drugs. So when I was a fugitive,
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
The mescaline.
When I was a fugitive. Yeah. So when I was a fugitive, I was down in Texas, and I was selling weed and stuff. And so the Mexican dude that I was getting the brick weed from, he had some mescaline, and he gave me the mescaline, and I took it, and I told all these people, he told me, yeah, I'll break it up like this, sell it for this amount, whatever. So I took it and I was trying to sell it to all my weed customers. And they kept telling me, like, I was showing it to them. I was like, I got mescaline. And they're looking at me, they're looking at it and they're like, no, we want chocolate mess. I'm like, chocolate mess? I'm like, what the? I'm like, this is mescaline. I just got it. What are you talking about, chocolate mess? I don't know what the fuck that is. So I call the Mexican dude. And I'm like, all these people, they don't want the fucking mescaline. I go, what the fuck? You gave me this shit I can't even sell. He goes, they're asking me for chocolate mess. I go, I need chocolate mess. And so he's like, dude, all you got to do, he goes, go to the store. He goes, buy some Nestle's Quick, some Nestle's chocolate, for the milk. And he goes, just mix that in. He goes, cut it with that. So I did that, and and rebagged it all up and cut it with that, and then it all sold. So it's like weird.
Marketing.
When
you want to hear
the
something
chocolate tie.
fucked up though, Seth? I had Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. I had Nikki Sixx on the show, and he like claimed that he invented fucking chocolate mescaline. What do you think about that? Nikki Sixx in like Seattle. Yeah, I love that shit.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah. Did he do it the same way like I said? Did he do it the same way I said?
Yeah, and he kind of said it like he came up with it. But who knows? It's a funny story. I'm just glad that somebody else sold chocolate mescaline, and I'm glad that it's the same story. It's in Nikki Sixx's new book that he did that as a kid, sold the chocolate mescaline, and it's just fucking funny.
No, it's crazy, man. How especially like in the whatever you want to call it, black market, traditional market, underground for drugs, like all these different ways that people market stuff and come up with different ways, to entice customers or whatever. Same thing they do in the mainstream, with all the commercials, but it's just weird when you look at the history and how all this stuff kind of evolved.
It's amazing. It's the same exact thing. It's perfect. Like the fact that like chocolate tie, Lebanese gold, the stamp on the fucking hash. Like if you got hash with a stamp on it, you were like, oh, that's the fucking stuff because it had the stamp. Yeah. And the stamp or bags on fucking heroin or the stamp on blotter, right? It's all that shit.
Oh, yeah.
And the better the marketing, the better the product moves, right?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, you see that today in the legal cannabis market with Cookies. I mean, Cookies is this big, huge brand out of California. It's going national and international. And they just started off with, if you're, listen to stuff for Burner, like they would say like they had good weed and they would smoke it. And that's what was like, they'd be like, you got the cookies, and that just meant like good weed, and then it evolved into this brand. And now they're like, probably the biggest weed brand in the world.
Right. I saw Cookies years ago. I thought it was just a fashion brand. I thought it was like a t-shirt company. It's a weed brand, huh? I didn't even know that. You see?
Yeah, no, they're huge, man. They're huge. They're everywhere. They're pretty much they're one of the biggest companies, are weed corporations right now in the whole US, They're branching out in all the medical states. And it's different weed because, they might give them the seeds, but it's grown by different people in different states, because you can't export, weed in the United States, but it's just a brand, man. It's just a marketing.
When did you become an entrepreneur? Like, when did you start dealing?
I'd say probably, around 15, I got more serious. So, I started smoking weed at 13. Then we moved to England. And, at first it was like, I was just a kid, and we would want to party, like on the weekends. So we'd get some weed, we'd get some alcohol. And it ended up, I was a person, I was the only person that really had like the balls, to go down in the town and deal with like the Jamaican dudes in England and buy the hash, because all the other white military kids, or not just white, but, whatever, black Spanish military kids too, they didn't want to go down there and deal with them. So, eventually like everybody would give me the money. They'd be like, oh, you're going to go score? You're going to go score? So I'd go score. So at first, I would just score for everybody and give them their stuff, and I would put my own stuff. But I quickly figured out that, hey, if I'm the one going to get the stuff, I can get, free drugs. So, it kind of evolved from that. First I was like, okay, like 13, 14, I was like, I could get free drugs. And then by 15, it was like, I can make money off this and get free drugs.
The bad.
And then it just kept growing. And then when I came back to the States, it just turned in, to something more and just kind of, snowballed into this really big thing that by probably like, 1989, I was selling, I was supplying like 15 colleges in 5 states on the East Coast with weed and LSD.
How did you get into the LSD racket?
What I was always curious, about hallucinogens. So, I'd say like that age, like 13, 15, I experimented a lot. I experimented with a lot of drugs. Like I never did heroin, but, I did coke, I did some speed. I didn't really like those because I'm kind of hyper anyhow. So those kind of drugs kind of make me, they don't, you know, I'm an extrovert already, so they kind of make me an introvert, you know, when I
Me
do
too.
drugs like that. You know,
Me
I'm more,
too.
yeah, I like more like downer stuff,
Me
you know,
too.
hallucinogens. But, you know, I started experimenting with like mushrooms, you know, and then LSD, and then always like from seeing the stuff about peyote in movies, like with the Indians, you know, you always see like the cowboy movies and they got the Indians. I think they had the big one, it was Young Guns,
Right.
you know, Young Guns in the late 80s.
Yeah,
And they,
yeah.
you know, they do that peyote and stuff. And I was like, really, I was like, man, that stuff was so cool. So I started experimenting with that stuff. And then when I moved back to the States, some of my, you know, some of my older relatives that were in Virginia where we moved, you know, they were following the Grateful Dead. So, you know, I would get weed from them, and, you know, they always had acid. And then I started following the Grateful Dead, and, yeah, I just really, you know, got in. I mean, I tripped a lot, you know, before I went to prison. I always tell people I probably tripped like 1,000 times, you know, before the age of 22. You know, I
Right.
took a lot of acid.
I took acid before I ever smoked pot, and the first time I took acid was at a Dead show in like 91 at Madison Square Garden. And I'm, you know, I sold acid in college, but never on like the scope that you did. I would sell a sheet and, you know, I'd spend $50 on a sheet and make 500 and be like, this is amazing. And me and my friend would get butt because we had this money for a couple months, you know, and we'd keep the doses in like the back of the CD. You know what I mean? Like you could peel the back off the CD and you keep doses there. No one's going to find it. And it was the greatest drug business that because I wasn't going to do all of it. It's too much and it's too crazy to do all that acid. I know you weren't a big Deadhead though. So tell me how you got into the Dead universe. Cause I love, the scene. I love hearing about the scene. I was never really in the scene. I wound up falling in love with the music later on. I was just like a New York City Jew who like was here and there. And I loved seeing the hippies, and I probably loved similar things that you did. Like, tell me about how you got into it and how the business kind of amped up.
Yeah, so I mean, first I'm just getting stuff, you know, from you know, my older relative, because him and his crew, they kind of like some of his buddies were like, you know, on tour and stuff like that, and they would send stuff by, and they had like a little, you know, retail market in you know, Fairfax, Virginia. So, you know, first I started going down to Kentucky and getting a lot of weed, and I was getting people to send me like you know, like Emerald Triangle, like Humboldt County bud, you know, every fall. And I made a lot of money on that, you know, well, not a lot of money, but, you know, as a kid, you know, I was, you know, making 10, 20, 30 grand or whatever. So, you know, to me at that time, that was a ton of money.
Sure.
And, then I was like, people were always asking for acid, and, you know, my relatives that were doing it, I mean, they had some, but they couldn't really give me a lot. You know, I mean, I could buy a couple sheets from them, but, you know, they were probably only getting like 5, 10 sheets at a time. So as I had this money, I was like, you know, and I really liked this drug. I really liked LSD. I was like, man, I want to kind of, you know, almost like the, you know, the Timothy Leary thing, you know, tune in, turn in, drop out. I was like, man, I want to make this available to people. I want to expand people's minds. You know, this, you know, so.
You were like an emissary, an LSD missionary.
Yeah, I tell people now all the time. I tell people now, I was a cannabis LSD advocate. You know, I mean, they call me a criminal, but I was an advocate. I was an activist. You know, I was just kind of before my time. So when I was talking to my, you know, older relative who I was getting it from, and I was like, man, I need to get more. I'm like, you know, hook me up. He's like, man, go on tour, man. Go on tour. You can get a contact. You know, so that's what I did. I went on tour and I hooked up with some of his friends that were on tour, you know, and they led me to the right people. And, yeah, so I was totally attracted to the Grateful Dead scene because of the drugs. Because to me, like when you went to the lot, it was like a open air drug market almost.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the mid to late 80s. And I developed the contacts, you know, and then I got it so I could just mail order it like right from San Francisco. Like I could just, you know, beat this dude. You know, back then we had like the 1-800 beepers. That was like, you know, this was before cell phones. So we had the 1-800 beepers. So I could just beep a dude, you know, call him payphone to payphone, you know, put my order in and they would mail me like 100 sheets, you know, and I would actually, I would wire them the money.
Did you have to become like an undercover hippie? Did you have to be like, yo, that Scarlet Fire was amazing? You know, like, did you have to like learn?
No, I never did, man. You know, because I've always been like what I consider you know, like a man's man. You know, like I'm a straight shooter. You know, I don't have any problem with confrontation. You know, I can go right to people. You know, tell them who I am, what I am. Yeah. So I never felt the need. Plus, I was already in because my relatives' friends were like, they'd been on tour. They were on the scene. Like they were like that hardcore deadheads, you know, that used to follow them everywhere. So, you know, I came right with them. So, you know, it was really, you know, accepted. And really, I was like, at that time, you know, because I was in Fairfax, Virginia. So I always think back, like I was kind of like, I was kind of like preppy, but, you know, I was kind of like what you might have called back then, like a sloppy prep. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I might wear like polos and stuff like that, but you know, at the same time, I wore Birkenstocks.
You had like a Bob Weir vibe.
Yeah. So I was kind of, you know, I had like that East Coast kind of college look.
Right.
But you know, I was on tour, and like I say, I was a man's man. So, you know, I was aggressive in what I wanted. You know, so I had no problem going right to people. And sometimes they might be like, "Well, who are you?" But then they would check, and I'm with these people who are on tour. So, you know, I would check out. So they'd be like, "Okay, we can do business with you."
So you never had to fake being a hardcore hippie or deadhead?
No.
You never said, "That Cosmic Charlie was killer last night, bro"? Nothing like that?
No.
Did you go to the shows?
Yeah, I would go to the shows. Really, at first, the whole music thing, because some of the people, I even had like some girlfriends, like they were like seriously into the music, and I never really understood it at first. But then later, after a couple years, I had a girlfriend that I dated for about 9 months, and she was older than me. She was like 4 years older than me, and she was like a hardcore deadhead. She actually, you know, eventually became like a heroin addict, a real bad heroin addict, because a lot of the deadheads back then were heroin addicts too. But she started giving me these tapes because, you know, I was a drug smuggler, so I was driving like all around the East Coast. So she gave me like all these tapes, like of the live shows. And so probably for about 2 years, you know, driving around, I listened to all these, you know, tapes. So, you know, I kind of had my little phase where I got into the music. But I mean, really, my type of music, I like, you know, I like metal, I like rap, I like punk. You know, I like more aggressive, you know, type of music.
Well, I think it cracks me up. You know what I mean? Like, I like the kind of anachronistic LSD advocate on dead scene, but still like, you know, it sounds like you're in it for the money, but you're also in it for the culture, but not necessarily the dead culture, more the freedom culture.
Yeah, I consider myself basically like I was a champion, you know, of the counterculture. You know, I was like, man, people want this stuff. I'm going to give it to them. And I didn't give a fuck about the drug war. I didn't give a fuck what my parents say. I didn't give a fuck about what mainstream media or the government or law enforcement said. You know, I was kind of like, you know, almost like, you know, like the rebel without a cause. But, you know, I had a cause, and my cause was psychedelics and cannabis.
Right. And how did you get busted? Like, what? How big did you get, and how did it all go down?
Yeah, so I got probably I got pretty big, like on the East Coast, you know, probably like around 89, 90, you know, 91, you know, when I caught my case, like a lot of people, I mean, like they knew who Seth was, you know, like I could walk like you know, I was kind of like a mythical figure, you know, in that drug world at all these colleges, you know, because people knew when I came to town, you know, that I was bringing the kind bud and that I was bringing, you know, the really good acid, you know, so but that's what, I mean, I'd say at my height, I mean, I was probably making, you know, 20, 30,000 a month, but this was only like, you know, I had like a 9-month run where I was doing that before I got busted. You know, everything was building up to that point. And I got to the point like maybe in 1990 where I was like, man, I was like, you know, because before I'm just partying, you know, I'm paying for everybody. I'm kind of doing, you know, all this stuff and kind of just, you know, being the rock star, the center of the attention, you know, because of the money and the drugs. And then like around 1990, I was like, man, like I can make a lot of money. You know, I had my ambition. I wanted to become a cash millionaire. You know, so probably like when I was 19, I set out, I was like, man, I'm going to become a cash millionaire, you know, and then I'm going to get out. That was my plan. You know, I was really motivated by money, but so I had like a little 9-month run, you know, but then, you know, with the height of the war on drugs and, you know, that was like the time too, like 91, they started going out to the suburbs because before with all those drug laws, they were just busting, you know, like the African American dudes like in the city for crack. That's really why they formed all those laws. But then after incarcerating the African Americans for like, you know, 3 years straight when these drugs started, then, you know, I guess they were getting a lot of complaints, you know, that it was racist, which it was. And then, you know, so to try to deflect, you know, the racist intention, you know, of these drug laws, they said, oh, well, we're going to go out to the suburbs. We bust white drug dealers too. So I was in that first wave in 91
Right.
when they first started going out to the suburbs, you know, and getting people for like weed and acid.
Right. And I want to get to the bus, but I'm just realizing I want to hear more about where the acid actually came from. Like I've heard about, you know, dead family acid people, and I've seen so much different acid in my own life, but I know I've seen so little compared to what was actually out there. Like who, like, and I don't need names, but like, how do you get into a dead family, acid family thing? And how does that even get structured? And like, what kind of doses were you selling? What did it look like and stuff? And did you ever have liquid acid in bottles and drop acid in your eyes? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I did that. And we used to do like sugar cubes. And I was getting mostly like MC Escher prints.
Right.
You know, so that was a big thing I was getting. And at that time too, they were doing like a lot of just like the you know, the white blotter too, because they didn't want to have, you know, because they were busting the prints and they were tracking it to certain people. So a lot of people were just putting out the white stuff. But yeah, I saw like a lot of blue unicorns, you know, the Bart Simpsons, and yeah, basically like I had a connection who was like a hardcore deadhead. He was on tour, and he was like in one, like what they call the families, you know, the Grateful Dead families, which, you know, I mean, there's a ton of them. It's just like little, you know, loose affiliations of people that do business together. And, you know, so he's in the families. So it's like, you know, I got my buddy, he's in the families, and then they got the chemists. And a lot of the chemists, a lot of it still, it's all centered like around San Francisco, you know, as it has been, you know, since the 60s. So, you know, basically, like there's these chemists and they feed all these families, and then they got these people in the families, and they would go on tour and sell it. You know, like I remember being at shows and like they're flying like 25 grams, you know, of crystal in, you know, but then once they get it there, then, you know, they got to lay it, they got to get the blotter. Like sometimes you would be on the lot and, you know, I'm trying, like my main objective is not the music. My main objective is drugs. So I'd be on the lot and I'd be trying to get, you know, like 100 sheets, which is basically, you know, like 10,000 hits. And they'd be like, well, the crystal's here. They flew 25 grams of crystal in, but we got to get the blotter paper's not here yet. You know, because also the blotter paper, you just couldn't buy it anywhere. They would have to specially make it and ship that in too. So then they would have to get it, and then they would have to lay it, you know, and then you could actually get it. So that's why eventually, like with my buddy, instead of going on tour, I'm like, man, just I want to do like a mail order, you know. So they hooked that up where I could just call someone and they would just mail it wherever I wanted. I could get it mailed anywhere. I could get 100 sheets. They would put it like right in an overnight envelope and ship it right like that. But that's kind of how it went. So, you know, like I knew some dudes, you know, they'd be like, oh, this dude's family, like on the lot or stuff. So you knew who the big dudes were. And there were actually, you know, they had dudes like, they had a dude like Cosmic Charlie, you know, he passed now, you know, but, you know, they had like Cosmic Charlie, they had Fast Eddie, he's passed too, but they had all these dudes, like you knew they were the big dudes on the lot. But at the same time, you had these dudes that you knew were the big dudes on the lot. You heard about the dudes that you never saw. Like you heard about the chemists, you know, but the chemists were never around, but you just heard. And to me, these were like these mystical, magical,
Wizards.
like almost like wizards. Yeah. Like sorcerers, you know, dudes like Leonard Picard, you know, or like Bear Stanley Owsley, you know, these dudes that were, you know, that were the well-known chemists. And it was like, it was too, because it was a total outlaw culture. Like, you know, you didn't say those people's names back then. Like people would talk about them and you knew who we were talking about, but you didn't say their names because of the law enforcement scrutiny, you know. And then it was also like, you didn't take pictures, you know, and you always had like a nickname, you know, or something, you know. I was always known as Seth, but, you know, nobody ever knew my last name, you know. But a lot of the dudes, like, you didn't even know their government, their first or their last name, you know. Right. They'd be like, you know, Drummer Al, you know, or all these different names. and like I said, like Fast Eddie, Cosmic Charlie. But the dudes who were basically the head dudes on the lot. And I not like I was doing business with them, but I would see them around, they would see me around. They might know more about me than I know about them, because a lot of times, just like law enforcement is doing investigations on people on that scene, the people in that scene that are controlling the flow of the acid, they're doing investigations on all the people that are going to. And as I started getting more and more and doing like 100 sheets a month, like they, then I put myself on their radar, so they would watch me. So if anything came back to them, like through my system, just basically, cleaning their house or making sure everything's kosher so nobody would get busted.
Right. And I'm sure back in the day, like when Owsley was making acid and like he's taking so much of the acid and the acid's in the air that it's affecting the way he's thinking. And there's a certain level of evolution of the brain from taking that many psychedelics, and then paranoia. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to call myself Bear, or like, I'm going to call myself this. And like, and those stories are amazing. Like, did you ever read the Owsley Stanley book? It's so fucking good. Did you read that book? It's like,
oh yeah. No, I did. Yeah. So actually, one of the docuseries that I'm working on now, the one that we're gonna premiere like the first act, like the first 20 minutes on Bicycle Day 419 in San Francisco at the Midway. We're actually like I am working with one of his women, like his partners, Roni Stanley, right? Who actually, yeah. So she's an executive producer on the film. She's giving me a ton of access, but so we're gonna recount all Bear's story, the brotherhood, and a lot of these stories have been told in different mediums in different places. But I think I'm the first person, like I'm putting it all together. It's all gonna be 3 films, 9 acts, and I'm gonna tell it all the way from Albert Hoffman all the way to now, what's going on now with kind of, the rebirth of psychedelics, because that's what they before it was made illegal and we went in kind of like this 50-year, drug war and forcing it underground, that's what there's all these people like Roni, Carolyn Mountain Girl Garcia, Leonard Picard, Mark McLeod from the Blotter Barn. I mean, they were all around back then, and their thing was they wanted to make a lot of acid because their thing was world peace. This was right. Like Summer of Love, Vietnam going on, and they thought that's what their thing. They wanted to make enough acid to dose everybody in the whole world because they thought it would lead to world peace. That was their objective, So, and then it got kind of sidetracked, and vilified and all the bad press with like bad trips. Even like when I was growing up, you hear like, oh, you see pink elephants, people, thinking they can fly. I mean, that was like, if 1% of the time, if that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But also,
yeah,
it's like they're scared of, I mean, like I'm sure you've seen a lot of it. I know I've seen a lot of people. Like we always say they were psychedelically traumatized. If you had a friend that took too much acid and they just wound up like they weren't the same, that happened. You could get great ideas on psychedelics and you could also be psychedelically traumatized. Both things were possible. Yeah. I never heard about anybody jumping off a building except in that Dragnet, that famous 60s Dragnet episode. I'm sure that's in the movie, right? Did you? Yeah. But I'm a big fan of all this stuff, and I think it's so cool that you're making this epic film series. But I don't want to get sidetracked from your crazy story. What was the bust? How did you get busted? What happened?
Yeah, so I mean, basically the summer of '91, because back then it would always get dry like every summer for the weed. You know what I'm saying? Because weed was usually around like harvest time in the fall, the good weed coming from California or Kentucky. And then the Mexican bud, would be the rest of the year. But then, by the summer, it would get dry. Like, you couldn't find any weed, So it was the summer of '91, and it was one of those cases where, I mean, there was no weed around. And all my friends from colleges, they were all back in Fairfax. And, my whole thing was, like, I was always building up for the fall because I made more money off weed. I really did make a lot of money off LSD. I made the money off the weed. So I was always trying to build up my capital so the fall, so I could go down there and buy a bunch of weed and then, make like $1,000 a pound. So that's what I was doing I'd spent a lot of money. So I went to Hawaii for like 2 months and just stayed in Hawaii, and I blew a lot of money. So I was like, man, I gotta get my money back up for the fall for harvest. So I basically flooded Fairfax County. I had all these dudes that dealt at all these colleges for me, and they're all back in Fairfax. And so I flooded it. I think that summer, like when I first started dealing with acid, it might be like $10, $15 hit. And then it got down, to like, around 88, 89, where it was like $5 hit. But then that summer, like 91, when everybody was back in Fairfax County, I was pumping so much acid into that area that like it went down to like $2 a hit.
Right.
Because there was like, there was
supply
like
demand
so much acid.
Right.
And how my case started was, they were having this big field party in this area called Clifton, in Fairfax County. It's kind of like where they had like $1 million houses and a lot of politicians lived there, a lot of professional sports players, and stuff like that, or rich businessmen. They lived out in this real exclusive area called Clifton, and they had these big houses that had a lot of land. So, like we do in the suburbs, when the parents go out, the kids have parties. So these one people, they had this big field party, and they brought like skate ramps, and they had like a stage and bands and everything. And it was like this whole weekend party while the person's parents were gone. And it was flooded with acid. Like I think at that part, we were just brought sheets and we were just giving stuff out. We were like, here, you know what I'm saying? And, then eventually, whatever, the neighbors called the cops, because even though it was a big field, we were making a lot of noise. So the cops come, and there was like a young kid that was tripping. I think he was only 15 at the time. And, he was tripping really bad. So he was like running around naked or something. So the cops saw him. The cops started chasing him, and they tackled him. And somehow, he freaked out, and he grabbed the cop's gun out of his holster, and he shot the cop. In the arm. Yeah, he shot the cop in the arm.
And he was tripping.
So once that happened, whatever, like they arrested him. And he cooperated with him and told him who he got it from. And the person who he got it from was actually someone that was probably like 7 people removed from me.
Right.
But, but he knew about me and stuff like that. He knew my name and stuff. So, they basically did a witch hunt, because, like the cop got shot. I mean, he didn't get killed or anything. I don't know if it was a flesh wound or if it broke some bones or whatever. But, whenever you do something against law enforcement in the country, they come down hard. So, they brought in the DEA. They had like this LSD witch hunt. They started busting everybody, and everybody kept saying my name. They kept hearing my name, Seth, 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 Seth. And so eventually they got people close enough to me, and some of my friends got set up in a sting, like on a state sting, and they cooperated. And then I got indicted federally.
So,
like in August,
August
of 91.
Your name was mentioned in the indictment, and then what? Yeah. Where did they come get you? Like, what was that situation?
Oh yeah, they basically came and arrested me. At my house. Searched my parents' house. They busted this other kid with 120 sheets, and he told them it was mine. And really, it was mine. I brought it in, but he got busted with that, and then they brought me in. So I was arrested on a state case first, and then as they kept investigating and got more cooperators, they pushed it federal, and then that's when they started saying I was like the Fairfax County LSD kingpin, and and like I say, I'm not saying I was moving a lot of drugs, but what they made me, I wasn't a kingpin, man. I was just a kid. A kingpin is somebody like Pablo Escobar, El Chapo.
El Chapo, yeah. You're a fucking kid. So you're a kid who happens to have like crazy acid connections. And at the time, was that when like it was like a hit as a felony? Was it that whole thing?
Oh yeah. It was crazy. I mean, that was the feds had all the conspiracy laws. So actually in my case, I got like a kingpin charge. I got like a CCE. It's like a RICO act. So that's like, that's like stuff they use for like, Manuel Noriega.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was crazy. Just.
And you're 21 years old, 22?
I was 20.
20 years
old. In 91, I was 20 years old. And they tried to make it seem like I had this big organization. And I didn't have any organization. I mean, you were in college. You know how the drug trade, worked in colleges. It was just I was a dude with the best connections, but I was freelance, and basically most people, I fronted almost everything. I would front and come back and collect the money. That's what I used to drive around to all the colleges. I had like a little route. I would go down to Virginia, then I would come up into Kentucky, then I would go to West Virginia, then I would come through Pennsylvania, and then I would come down in Maryland, and I would hit all the colleges, and I had friends at every colleges, and I would just drop off, every college, 10, 20 sheets, 5, 10 pounds of weed. And like I said before, I made all my money on the weed. The acid, I was probably paying 25, 30 cents a hit.
Right.
So for like 100 sheets for me was probably like $3,000. And I was selling for like, maybe 80, 90 cents a hit.
Right.
So, I was making for 100 sheets, I was maybe making like $5, $6,000, which was peanuts because on the weed, I mean, I was making, $800,000 a pound on the weed.
Wow.
So if I had 20 pounds of weed, I was making a killing.
Right. And the bud was good. Good bud?
Yeah. I was getting, I got mostly the kind bud. I used to get, but the kind bud would only be in the fall. So I had contacts with farmers down in Kentucky, and I had contact with some of my homeboys in San Francisco, like deadheads that used to get the weed out of Humboldt County. So, they would just mail it to me, so I would mail, and I would drive down to Kentucky. And then the rest of the year, because the harvest, the kind bud would usually run out by like December, January, and it would start going up too, because like September, it might be like $1,500 a pound. And then by January, it'd be like $4 or $5,000 a pound as it got less. And then the rest of the year, I would just go get the Mexican brick pot out of Texas. I would drive down there. Or I would drive down to Fort Myers, Florida, and get like whatever, 50, 100. I used to fly down to Texas too, Dallas, Texas. And I would put like 50, 75 pounds, like in a big green Samsonite, old school 1970s, suitcase.
Yeah.
And I would check it and fly it right back, to like the DC, DC National, and just go pick it up off the carousel.
It's funny because it's like all this stuff is making me think of the old High Times magazine and the Bud review in the back and, kind Bud, you know what I mean? Like just, I used to think it was such a joke until I fell in love with kind Bud. So I love to hear you talk.
Yeah. No, that's what we called it, the kind bud. That was it.
Yeah, I remember the first bud that I smoked that was considered kind bud. There was a kid at our school who got Silver Haze in Ithaca, and he was like, "We got the kind bud," and he got busted, and they gave us like a pound because he needed to get rid of the bud, and then we all got busted. It was terrible. But I want to know, after all that shit happened, how did you become a fugitive? What was that connecting story? Because that seems like the craziest thing of all.
Yeah, well, I was basically facing like 20 to life, and I was 20 years old, and I mean, I thought what I was doing was right. So I mean, it was like a big eye opener. I wasn't really hip to the war on drugs. I was in the suburbs, so I wasn't like dealing crack or cocaine or heroin. So, I didn't think any of that all pertained to me, and plus I was a nonviolent first time, offender. So, and like I said, I've always been like a real forward thinking, bold, brash, aggressive type of personality. That's my personality. So I was kind of like, man, fuck this. I'm not going to jail for 20 to life. I had a little bit of money, and I remember, from being in that area in Fairfax since since around 86, like since I was about 15, that, because back then they had, it was newspapers back then. It wasn't all digital. This was before the internet and everything. And I was like an avid sports fan. So we would get the Washington Post, and I would always go right to the sports section. But sometimes when you go to the sports section, the Metro section was right before the sports section. So sometimes I might see the headlines on the Metro section. And I remember they would always report these suicides. People commit suicides in this national park called Great Falls, because they had the Potomac River, and there was like an area where it was like what they call Class 5 rapids, which like only like the super professional people would like even kayak there. But people would always jump in the water there and commit suicide, because if you jumped in the water, you're either going to get smashed against the rocks or you're going to drown because you can't swim because, of the rapids. So this was always like lingered in my mind. So then when I decided, you know, I'm like, man, I'm not going to do 20 to life. I'm like, man, fuck these motherfuckers. I got some money.
You were waiting
I'm
for
going
the
to take
case?
off.
They bust you and then they let you out to wait for the case, right?
For sentencing. Yeah.
So you're like,
I ended up,
right. You're like, I got to disappear before I get the sentence.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, and you know, at that time too, I tell people they didn't have the movie at that time, but I had read the book. The book that Catch Me If You Can is based on. Like that book came out like you know, like mid 80s or something. So I had actually read that book, you know, probably like 2 years before this happened.
Amazing.
You know, so I was kind of like, man. I was like, man, I don't want to face this. And then like I was given two choices basically. You know, like they were like, you know, go to trial and face 20 to life, or they were like cooperating. Already a bunch of pretty much almost all my friends from high school, you know, gave information and cooperated against me. So I was like, man, I'm not going to do this. You know, I'm not the type of person, I can't look in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going to, you know, this is my problem. I'm not going to bring more people into it to get out of it, you know? So I was like, man, fuck this. I'm going to take off. I saw that as my only option, you know? I mean, when you're 20 years old and you're looking at 20 to life, you know, tell on all your friends, you know, taking off and become a fugitive seemed like the best option to me. So that's what I did. I staged my suicide. I faked my suicide in Great Falls. And then I took off. I took off to California. And when I was in LA.
Wait, hold on.
I was going down.
Did you tell the story of how you faked the suicide though?
All right. So what I did is, I mean, basically I just like made a scene. Like I went off the trail, you know, like on the cliffs. You know, and I put my jacket, you know, I put my wallet with my ID, you know, I had like half a bottle of vodka, you know, and I had like some cigarettes, and I just made it seem like I was just on the cliff. And then, you know, I jumped in and I had my car there, and I had a suicide note in my car. And then I just waited, you know, because it was like hiking trail, so people would always walk by. So I waited until I saw this couple came by, and like I ran out, you know, and all frantic, and I was like, my friend jumped. You know, and then I took off, and I had somebody else pick me up, and they took me right to the airport. And those people, I guess they found the scene. They called the park rangers. So when I got to LA, you know, I thought I made it, because my whole idea was if they don't find a body for 7 years, then my parents can have me declared legally dead. Once I'm declared legally dead, the case against Seth Ferrante, it's gone, you know, and I can become whoever. You know, and I've been studying like a lot of stuff. I've been reading a lot of different books about IDs, you know, and I've been watching like a lot of the fugitive shows, you know, like America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, because I was studying like how different people had done stuff. And I saw that a lot of people had been fugitives, you know, for like sometimes 25, 30 years. Sometimes they never found them. So I was like, you know, these people aren't any smarter than me. I can do this too. And I just have to become somebody else. But
how scary was that period? Like, how scary was before sentencing, fucking faking your own death? You know, did your parents think you were dead?
No, I had my friend who drove me to the airport. I had him go tell my mom, you know, what was up. So she knew. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was as scary, because it was like on adrenaline. Sometimes when like you're in these situations, it's just like, this is what you got to do. So I wasn't scared. I was just like amped up on adrenaline, you know, like I got to get away. You know, I got to escape. So, you know, like
it was an adventure
my back was
too,
against
right?
the
It was
wall.
an exciting adventure.
Oh,
you
yeah,
were
yeah.
this hero in your head, like that you would love, this whole outlaw thing. This is it. You know, like nothing is more outlaw than being a fugitive. You know, like that's pretty crazy. Like faking your own death.
Yeah. So, but the only thing that you know, because like I say, I was abusing LSD, I was abusing weed. Even at this time, I was abusing alcohol a lot. You know. I've never been a big alcohol guy, but this was like one time, like I was drinking like a 12 pack of, you know, like Bass Ale every night, you know, kind of drowning my sorrows or whatever. So, you know, like I said, I thought I had this super, you know, foolproof, you know, idea, and, you know, I was so smart and made all these plans, but, you know, I fucked up in one way, because where I staged my suicide, I did it on the wrong side of the dam. So as I'm in LA, I'm reading the papers, you know, from the Washington Post. I'm going down to the newsstand every day, and I'm getting the Washington Post, and I'm reading, and they're reporting on this. And they're, you know, first is like, you know, Fairfax County LSD kingpin commits suicide. You know, and I was like, yeah, my fucking plan worked. You know, 7 years, my parents can get me declared legally dead. You know, Seth Ferrante's gone. I can be whoever I want, you know, and have a normal life or whatever. But what they did is the park rangers, like in this, they dragged the river for 2 weeks, you know, because there was a dam where I staged a suicide. So, and then 2 weeks later, they said, like, you know, the headline in the Metro section was like, you know, federal prosecutors declare Lsd kingpin suicide a hoax because they didn't find a body. So I fucked up. You know, that was like my one fuck up, you know, in that regard, in that plan. I staged my suicide on the wrong side of the dam.
So when you moved to LA and you're like, I can start a new life, did you have a dream of what the new life would be?
No, I mean, I was just kind of, I mean, I was running, you know, I mean, you know, it was also too, because like my whole identity, everything about me was built on being this counterculture drug dealer, you know, rock star type figure. So, you know, and at 20 years old, when all that was taken, and then, you know, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, you know, like, you know, then, you know, you start, even if you're certain, like I believed in all this stuff, but then when all this stuff happens, I'm like, well, you know, you question yourself, you second guess yourself. Like, maybe I am wrong. You know, maybe society is right. You know, maybe I am a drug addict. Maybe all this stuff I'm doing is wrong. You know, so it's just like, you know, like my whole self-esteem, everything just was like, went out the window because it was all built on this identity. So I was like stripped of everything. I was stripped down to nothing. So when I was a fugitive, I was kind of, you know, I was running, but I was trying to find myself. Like, I didn't know who I was, you know, which is a lot of things I think a lot of people experience, and a lot of people, you know, who abuse or get addicted to drugs, you experience that. So, yeah, so I was just kind of trying to figure out who I was. So, I mean, I had a plan, you know, I was getting different IDs. I was establishing like legitimate, you know, identities, you know, I would find like, you know, I read all these books. They had all these books. They had these companies back then called like Loon Panics and Paladin Press. That's like where like they used to sell stuff. Like the Anarchist Cookbook is probably like one of the best well-known ones.
Yeah,
but they had all these books like on identities, like Paper Trip 1, 2, and 3. You know, understanding U.S. identifying documents. You know, Reborn in the USA. And I read all these books, and I figured out through reading these books that you could find, if you found somebody who basically was born in one state and then died in another state, you know, as a young kid or a baby, like under 5, then the only identifying document they had at that time was the birth certificate.
Right.
And they, at that time, which I still don't know if they do it now, but they didn't cross-reference birth and death certificates if it was a different state. Like, you know, if you were born in the same city or the same state and you die, then they'll cross-reference it and they'll mark deceased on the birth certificate. But if it was born in one state, died in another state, they didn't do that because there was you know, yeah. So that's why I found all these, you know, candidates. I would go, you know, I was out in LA and I would go to UCLA, and they have this big, like newspaper archives, like on the microfilm. So I would go there every day and I would just scour like obituaries until I found like candidates that worked. And then I would write, you know, then with the information from the obituary, I could write and get the death certificate. And I would just act, you know, you got to act like you're a relative, but it's just a letter and you put like a $10 money order or something, you know, and I was running everything through like mail drops, you know, like mailbox, etc., stuff like that. So I would open up these mailboxes, you know, I would get the death certificate. And then once I get the death certificate, you only need to know 3 things for the death certificate. That's, you know, the person's name and, you know, the place of death and the date of the death. And you can get the birth certificate or the death certificate. Then to get the birth certificate, once I had the obituary and I had the death certificate, I could get the birth certificate, because you got to know 5 things for the birth certificate. You got to know, you know, the person's name, you know, father's name, mother's maiden name, you know, place of birth, you know, date of birth. So then I would get all that information, and then I would act like, you know, whatever, I'm the person's dad or whatever. Send me this birth certificate, and I would run it through these mailboxes. And then once I got the birth certificate, I was pretty much home free, because when you go to the DMV, all you need is a birth certificate, and then you need something to verify your social security number. And it was really easy to verify a social security number because all you needed was a W-2 form. And so from these books, I found out that you could, you know, like any business, you go to any like business supply company, you can buy like a box of W-2 forms, you know, like government issued W-2 forms, like that they would fill out for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would get those. And then I had this other book called Understanding U.S. Identifying Documents. and it broke down like, because every social security number, it basically goes by state. Like for my social security number, it starts out with 039. So that was like designated like maybe like 037 to like 040 was like the state, that I got my social security number. And then the next two numbers are issued by like the year, so it's not like if you got it in 75, it's not going to say 75, but it might be like, 23. So
Right.
23 in this state means that it was issued in 75. And then the last four numbers are just random. So once I figured out the formula, I figure out I got the birth certificate. Okay, he was born. So I make it, social security number issued from that state, maybe a couple, because back then in the 70s, now kids might get social security numbers like right when they're born, but back then sometimes kids wouldn't get a social security number until maybe you start working, when
Right.
you're 15 or 16. So, you could do that. And then I would go with the W-2 form, and I would go with the birth certificate, and I would go get like a walker's ID, and then, later if I want to get a driver's license. And, I was still at the age though, where I was young enough, like if they said, well, like, why haven't you had an ID before? You had an ID in another state. And then I would use like my military brat story. I'd be like, oh, well, I was stationed overseas,
Right.
with my parents.
Which
I just
works.
came back to the States. Yeah. And it worked. And basically, if you have the paperwork, to back it up, you are who you say you are,
Right.
so I would just come in and I established like, 20, 25 different IDs through legitimate means. I even got 4 passports. I had 4 passports because as a fugitive, my goal was I wanted to get like 250,000 cash, and then I was going to like, go disappear overseas, because I lived in Germany as a kid, and I lived in England as a teenager. So, I had friends, over there, our friends that my parents had formed friendships with, people that I knew. So that was like eventually my plan. But, I needed money. So I was hustling the whole time, to get, this goal of $250,000 cash so I could take off. Yeah.
So what happened? Like, how did you get caught?
Well, I mean, I'm
And
I'm
also, was
hustling
your
weed
your
and-
plan? Your plan was England or Germany, or like I'm going to get $250,000 together, and then I'm gonna
Europe, probably England, other Europe, because I figured 250 would give me, enough time, a couple years to kind of get established, and then, probably like I figured I could go over there, I could do the same thing, and then I could become like I could get UK ID, become like a UK citizen,
right.
So yeah, so that was like, at first I didn't have that plan, but as the the suicide ruse didn't work, I kind of developed this new plan.
You needed a plan.
Yeah, so that was kind of it. But I was still hustling, because I had a little bit of money, but it ran out like in 6 months. I was out in LA, so then I had to go back to Texas and hook up with my Mexican weed dealer, and I started hustling again, So this is like 91 to 93, so this is like the height of the war on drugs. So I mean, if you're selling drugs at the height of the war on drugs, you're bound to get caught. So I kind of started hustling. I started taking weed from Dallas, Texas up to St. Louis. And I kind of had like my little second drug run where I started making money again. Started kind of getting my mojo back, and started forming all these plans, but, I built up some money, but I didn't build up enough as I needed. And eventually, I got arrested with somebody else. My buddy got busted, and he had some weed in the car, and I was in the car like when they got pulled over. So they took us both in. And even though he said it was his weed and they released me, they printed me, so they printed me. And once they printed me, it was like, I had no idea. I was like top 15 U.S. Marshals list, which that's another crazy thing in my life. Cause, I was a first time nonviolent offender. So it was like, how did I get made a top 15 U.S. Marshals list, like, with the, so what they were saying, they had the FBI top 10 most wanted, and then they got the U.S. Marshals, they call it the top 15 list. So, for like that 2 years or whatever, they had me as like one of the most 25 most wanted people in the United States. I didn't know at the time, but after, I once I went to prison, I started doing like Freedom Information Acts, and I started getting like a lot of information. And I was doing it to all the different government agencies, the park rangers and everybody that investigated me. And so I found out there was this guy named Henry Hudson who was with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Northern Virginia, and he was like the second in charge. He was like the assistant U.S. attorney on my case, right? So when I took off, you know, I kind of left like a black mark on their record, you know, because they felt like, you know, this little 20-year-old suburban kid, like, you know, outsmarted the feds. So right after I left, I absconded. This dude, he went from being the assistant U.S. attorney to the head of the U.S. Marshals in Northern Virginia. So basically, like, this dude, just because like I was a black marketer, he felt like I was the one that got away. He did all the paperwork, you know, to make me a top 15 fugitive as a first-time nonviolent offender. And even like when I got caught, like the U.S. Marshals were looking at me because I looked like a little college kid, you know, and they're like looking at me. They're like, who the fuck did you piss off? You know, but at the time, I didn't really know. You know, it wasn't until later, like 7 to 8 years later, when I start to get all this paperwork and I start to investigate everything and figure out, you know, why everything acted. And I'm doing like these massive Freedom of Information acts, you know, for like 2-3 years, that I kind of pieced all this together. And it's kind of ironic too, because, you know, in our country, the way the criminal justice system works, like people that work for the criminal justice system, you know, how they get promoted is by winning cases or getting these feathers in their cap. And I'll give you a perfect example. Everybody knows Rudy Giuliani. You know, Rudy Giuliani made his name by busting Gotti.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So this dude, Henry Hudson, he's a Fourth Circuit appeal court judge now in Richmond, Virginia. So, you know, I'm not saying, you know, he just got that off of me. You know, there were probably several other cases.
But you were a great feather in his cap.
Yeah, and really he made me into more than I was, you know, because whatever, he was pissed off that I outsmarted, you know, their office. So, you know, I should have, you know, that's what I always see. Like, you know, people talk about crimes and people talk about, you know, what's right and what's wrong. But I always look, especially at law enforcement. That's why I think our whole criminal justice system and law enforcement is corrupt. It's not like these individual people are corrupt. You know, some are, but that's like the small percentage. The whole system is corrupt. Because what that dude making me into this top 15, I mean, that should have been a crime. I should have never been made, you know, top 15. I mean, obviously I'm biased because maybe if I wasn't top 15, I would have never got caught. But still, I mean, it's like they want to examine people like me and investigate us and say everything we're doing wrong, but their own people can cut corners and do what they want in the name of justice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And totally. And they're rewarded with a federal appeal court judgeship.
Right. And it's not like, listen, you wound up serving 21 years. So it's not like, it's very hard to look back and say everything happens for a reason. But like, because you did what you did, you're making incredible art now. You have a purpose, you have a vision, you know, which is, I mean, that's some of the most important shit to have in your life. So, I mean, that's something good that came of it. If you hadn't gotten busted, who knows if you would have a purpose and a vision, or you'd have a different one, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like who I am today. You know, I like where I'm at. I mean, it's been a long road. I've had to endure a lot of stuff, but, you know, I you know, persevered and I came out the other end. You know, I got 3 college degrees in prison that, not that the prison paid for, that my parents paid for, correspondence. So I got an AA, a BA, and a master's degree. You know, I started writing. I was doing columns for Vice in prison. You know, I wrote like 22 books in prison, you know, on gangsters and prison life, you know, and prison gangs and stuff like that. And yeah, now
you wrote 22 books in prison. 22.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, like, what made you realize that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, first off, I just started reaching out because I was so mad about my case, you know, because I got 25 years as a first-time nonviolent offender, you know. So I was like, you know, and like I say, this is my country. I'm American. I'm like, you know, how is my own country doing this to me? You know, when you see like the United States of America versus Seth Ferrante, I mean, that's like crazy. That's like your whole country is against you,
right?
You know, so I was very, very angry, you know. So at first I was reaching out because I was trying to get publicity for my case because I was like, man, this shit is fucked up. You know, why the fuck do I got 25 fucking years for fucking selling some weed and acid at colleges, you know, and never carried a gun, never really was a violent person at all. And so that kind of led, you know, to writing about my case as I'm taking these college courses and I'm taking a lot of journalism, You know, I've taken a lot of creative writing, because when you take correspondence courses, you can go two routes, basically like a liberal arts or like a business, you know, kind of business administration or whatever. So I went like the liberal arts, which was, you know, reading and writing heavy, reading all these, you know, classic literatures, you know, different stuff, and writing about it, and then, you know, journalism and all that stuff. So I started writing about my case first, and then to me, it was almost like, to me, it was like a drug too, because once I started getting recognition, once I started getting that stuff published, it just made me want more.
Right.
You know, and then as I got into the writing more, and then I got where, like, you know, by the end of the 90s, you know, like people, they want to start paying me to write from prison. You know, when I started doing stuff for Vice, I started doing a lot of prison basketball stuff for like Hoops Hype, Slam, you know, and you know, I'm doing all this different stuff, and then I get paid. So then, you know, just like when I started selling drugs, you know, money is like, takes the motivation to another level.
Right.
You know,
it's intoxicating too, because it gives you status. It's a different status. Now you're this author in prison who's getting paid and status, and it's feeding probably a similar thing that when you're the rock star LSD dealer is feeding.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's always been, you know, about recognition. I don't know, whatever it is, you know, like all of us involved, you know, if it's podcasts, making movies, writing books, whatever, we have this thing, you know, where we want that recognition. We want to get our opinion out there. We want to be, you know, justified or verified, or we want people to like our stuff. I mean, you know, not everybody has that, but, you know, a lot of artistic people have that. So, and to me, I think, like, when I think back now, you know, as a 51-year-old man, I think it all goes back to, you know, that military brat thing. Because, you know, I was moving like every 2 or 3 years when I was growing up. So I always had to like reestablish myself, and, you know, with friends and in the community, like in the school. And then as soon as I would feel like I'm established, we would move again, and I would have to start from scratch. So,
right.
I mean, maybe that's why I have like this recognition. I'm always like, you know, still to this day, like I'm screaming, you know, for recognition, you know, with all my work. I'm like, you know, whatever, you know, look at me, recognize me, you know, like my shit, you know.
But you're prolific
and like I
as
say,
hell. You don't stop working. Like, you just made this this Netflix movie that was a crazy hit, right? White Boy.
Yeah, White Boy. Yeah, so I formed a relationship with White Boy Rick. I started writing him because I was doing my Street Legends series. I was writing about all the, you know, like the inner city gangsters, like from the crack era. So I was locked up in West Virginia, and there was a lot of guys from Detroit. So I kept hearing about this guy, White Boy Rick. So I reached out to him, and I was like, you know, because he was in another prison. So I had my wife write him, and I was like, dude, like, I want to tell your story. You know, here's my books. And he was like, man, I like your, he'd write me back. He'd be like, man, your books are awesome. He goes, but my story isn't really like that. And, you know, at first he started telling me, like, you know, how he was an informant, and, you know, how the government basically like pimped him out and used him. And like at that time, I'm writing like these, I'm basically like romanticizing and glorifying. I'm making these crack era drug lords like into like these, you know, Billy the Kid, John Gotti type.
It's Young
figure.
Guns.
You
It's
know?
Young Guns, right? On Freeway Ricky Ross or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's telling me like this different story. So when I first started writing them, I couldn't, you know, it wasn't registering me. I couldn't get around it because like I was like, well, this is what I do, and he was telling me this story that didn't kind of vibe with what I was doing. But you know, I kept writing, and we kept the relationship because, you know, he was a white kid, went to prison young, had a lot of time, and I was. So, you know, we had kind of these similarities, you know, where we identified with each other. And it took me a lot of years, man, as a writer and as a person. So it probably wasn't, you know, until after I'd been writing for, you know, like, you know, 7 or 8 years that I started looking at the drug war and law enforcement for what it really was, you know? Because like when you're in the prison, it's like, oh yeah, you know, fuck the snitches, you know, these dudes fucked it up, you know. But then when you look at it more like the bigger picture, it's, I mean, it's still whatever. I mean, the snitches, they snitched, that's what they did. But you got to look at the reasons why they snitched. You got to look at the reasons how the system's set up. You know, and a lot of times when they're threatening 10, 20 years, you know, most people aren't gonna stand up. You know, most people are gonna tell them whatever they want because they can't face that. You know, it's the minority, you know, a very low percentage of people. So I started looking at the system, and then I started seeing Rick's story different. I started seeing him as a victim of the drug war. So that kind of opened up my writing more. So I started doing like more criminal justice reform, you know, prison reform stuff as I grew as a person and as I grew as a writer. So then I started writing about him while I was still in prison. And yeah, I had this one piece. It was on this drug war site called The Fix, like in 2012 while I was still in, and it kind of went viral about his story and attracted a lot of attention. So I kept writing about him. And then, as I get closer to getting out, I kind of decide, I'm like, I've been writing, but I go, to me as a writer, how the next level in writing is writing for film. So I kind of got that in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm a writer. I got all these books out, but when I get out, I want to make film. So I started studying film more. And then, I kept writing to him, and I say, look, dude, I said, when I get out, I want to try to find somebody. I want to get you out, but, I want to try to get a film made about you, that tells your story and stuff like that. And that's, when I got out, like through my journalistic stuff, I was doing a lot of stuff where I was interviewing like writer, directors, producers who were putting out like true crime stuff, or even like, crime, drug type movies. I was doing a lot of that stuff for Vice because that's the stuff I like to watch. So I was developing these contacts, because I would interview these people. I'd get them an article on Vice when their new stuff came out. But then I was forming relationships so then I could pitch my ideas, to these producers. And that's how I hooked up with Sean Rhett, from Transition Studios. He had put his first movie out called Murder in the Park, and I interviewed him for it. And then, I kind of told him these different ideas I had. And then, he started reading my stuff about White Boy Rick. And at the same time, they were making a Hollywood movie, was starting production, with Matthew McConaughey called White Boy Rick. And he was like, man, let's do the doc. He's like, I think I can find money for this. And he found the money. And we basically, made the documentary. And I was kind of like, he kind of mentored me in documentary filmmaking because I knew how to tell a story. I was already a writer. But, I'd never made a film or anything. So I worked with him. He used to fly me in for all the shoots. And it was cool because he would sit in the director's chair and interview all these people. And then, like, when he was done, he would tell me, he'd be like, oh, Seth, go ahead. Take 5 minutes. And I would sit in the director's chair and I would throw some more questions, and interview the people. And then he, like, took me through the whole process, and basically taught me everything. And this guy, Sean Rhett, too, he cut his teeth. He made like, 200 Crime Stopper shows for all the networks. That was kind of like how he started. And he had won like 9 regional Emmys in Ohio. So he was like an Emmy winning, director, producer. That's cool. I kind of learned under him, and then, even when White Boy first came out, because it was on Stars for like 2 years. And, some people watched it or whatever, but it didn't go viral or it didn't cause like this big buzz. It wasn't until it went on Netflix, a year ago in April at the end of the pandemic that it blew up. Because I think we were a benefit. I call it like the Tiger King effect.
Right.
You know Absolutely. What I'm saying? Yeah. So it goes on in April. It's at the end of the pandemic. People are still at home. They're looking for something. And it just like blew up. It was like it was a new release. And it was like top 10 on Netflix. Not top 10 documentaries. It was like top 10 for everything on Netflix for like 2 weeks. And then it had like 20 million views in 2 months. And, before that, I was kind of, I had all these ideas and stuff I wanted to do, but I didn't have any money. Film is expensive. So, you need money, to hire the right people, to get the equipment, to do all the travel and stuff like that. So, and it's weird too, because, when I was talking about that dab run earlier, so I was kind of like in a funk, I was kind of depressed. I was smoking dabs all day. I was kind of like zombified, because I couldn't get money for this stuff I wanted to do. Nobody believed in me. My name wasn't big enough, in the film world as a writer director. So once White Boy went on Netflix and blew up, it kind of put me on the map. And that's like, as soon as that happened and people were more interested because people started coming out, even people I had pitched before and asked for money, and they passed, they came back to me and they're like, well, what was that idea you had? Right. They're like, we might want to invest. So it was like right at that time, I was like, man, I had like some serious conversations with my wife, about my drug use. And she was like, look, you got all this interest. She's like, she's like, basically, she's like, you're 50. She's like, this is your time right now. 100%. She's like, you need to be the best that you can be. And You're not the best you can be smoking dabs all day. Right. So, I kind of knew this all in myself, but, having her tell me, you know, I might have been a little resistant at first, but you know, so it was kind of, I was like, okay, fuck it. And,
man.
And I'm not going to say I went completely stone sober because, you know, I was still, you know, drink some whiskey every now and then. And I like to like microdose on mushrooms. You know, that's one of my things too. So, you know, it wasn't like I was too, but I kind of left the cannabis alone. And now I got 6 projects in the works right now that are 3 of them are nearing completion. And then, you know, 3 more, I'm making good headway. So basically, like in the next 12 months, I'm going to be dropping about six different projects, documentary.
I think that's
projects.
awesome. I mean, I think it's just incredibly inspiring, the shit you do. I have 2 more questions, basically. First question is, you get out of prison after 21 years, and here you're talking about how much money you need to finance films. Does hustling ever pop into your head again?
Yeah, no, of course, because, you know, it's weird. When I got out of prison, all my friends, you know, from prison that are out, they're all in the weed game, or they're doing like white collar crime. Because, you know, once you do time, you figure like what are the things, you know, that the government's not really worried about. So, you know, with the legal weed, you know, they're not really stressing the weed. I mean, you know, if you put it in their face, whatever, they'll bust you, or they find a bust. They're not going to, you know, turn away a bust or let you go. But it's like low profile. So I got out, like all my friends are hustling weed, right? And I got like friends, you know, like I had a lot of temptation because I got a lot of friends. They're like, here, man, you know, take this, take that. Dude, you want to do something in your area? You know, I can hook you up. And I'm like, no, man, I'm doing this film stuff, man. I'm doing this writing stuff. You know, but it helped because basically when I got out for the first 5 years I was out, you know, even though I was making White Boy, I supported myself like with journalism. You know, I was like one of the biggest freelancers at Vice.
Yeah, you wrote a million things like, there. I mean, I mean,
from like 2015 to 2020. I mean, I was their biggest freelancer. So, and I was making good money. Like I'm telling you, when I got out of prison, and I was in the halfway house first for 6 months. So the halfway house, like you got to have a job and all this stuff. So, you know, I didn't have enough time to write. But after I got out of the halfway house, and I just went down to a part-time job, you know, because I told my PO, I said, look, I'm going to keep this part-time job because I know you guys want me to have a job, but I go, I'm going to make it part-time because I got this writing career. You know, I had already had a lot of clips, you know, but I go, I want to go into this full steam, and she was like, cool, you know what I'm saying? So I jumped in. So it was crazy. So I got at halfway house, you know, I'm working like some bullshit jobs, $10 an hour, maybe making whatever, $2,000 a month. And then I started writing, and I'm making like $5,000 to $8,000 a month, you know, like 6 months out of prison, you know, but I'm busting ass, you know, I'm sometimes I'm publishing like 3 to 5 pieces a week.
It's amazing.
You know, and I'm like, really for like, you know, and I was on the national scene too for like, you know, for like the true crime, the drug stuff, the prison stuff. You know, I was like Vice's go-to guy, and I kind of, you know, I developed myself into like a Q&A guy where I did a ton of Q&As. You know, Q&As are simple because you just shape it. It's more shaping than writing. You know, just interview and then you transcribe and you shape. So that enabled me to do more stuff, you know, because it's not like I'm just writing stuff off my head. And then 2, I started doing these features for like Penthouse and, you know, a lot of the foreign magazines, like in the UK and Australia, like Real Crime. And I was doing all these big features, and I was getting pretty good money for them too. So, you know, I had kind of that. So luckily, because of that, I was making good enough money. You know, I didn't have to give in to the temptation. Yeah, because I had dudes. I had all my homies from prison. You know, they were like, dude, here they're like trying to throw me stuff. Here, man, just take this. You know, because they trusted me. You know, they knew I was about my business. Yeah, so I kind of I was lucky. You know, if I was just working a bullshit job the whole time, $12 an hour, maybe I would have succumbed to that. But you know, because of the journalism career, you know, and like I say, the journalism career was twofold because not only was it good money, you know, I was making a lot of contacts, you know, because that's what I was like, I want to do film. So I started doing where I was just like looking for films that I liked, that I would have watched anyhow. And I would get the films before it was released, and I would get to interview the filmmaker for Vice. You know, so, and I would make that contact. You know, and some people you vibe with, some people you don't vibe with, but I was always pushing my ideas on the filmmaker because that's, you know, that was my ultimate goal. And, you know, luckily enough, you know, I got with Sean Reck and White Boy, and then boom, hit Netflix, and yeah, here we are today, and I'm about to drop 6 projects in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's time to get working on the Dopey project, the Dopey Netflix movie. I think that's what I'm seeing right here. No, you're serious fucking inspiration. It's very exciting to me, all this stuff. How do you microdose mushrooms? Like, is it in your tea right now? Like, how do you microdose mushrooms? Like you just.
Well, I get these. Well, I do it mostly like I get these capsules.
Right.
It'll be like 0.5 grams extract. You know, so yeah.
Is
so
it
I
like
just
speedy?
get these capsules.
What does it feel like? It's not a deep trip.
No, mushrooms, like maybe you can get, you have like a little moment of anxiousness when it first hits, but then it's just like you get like a really warm feeling. You know, you kind of smile more. To me, the microdosing the mushrooms, it just makes me appreciate my life and what I have, you know, and my wife and my house and my dogs. It makes me appreciate everything more, because sometimes in life, you know, especially in America, you know, everything is so materialistic. You look at what you don't have.
Right.
You know, I think that's the biggest problem in American society today, or maybe the whole world. You know, a lot of times we look at what we don't have. And when I microdose these mushrooms, it makes me really appreciate what I do have.
You find that psychedelic gratitude.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing. It's like, you know, a lot of people, like, I have to go to work. You know, I have to work out. I have to do this, right? You got to flip it, right? You got to be like, I get to go to work. I get to work out. You know, because you're fucking alive. You know what I'm saying? And you got your health. You know, some people don't. I mean, some people are in fucking wheelchairs. Some people got, you know, different diseases. Some people got like fucked up mental shit. Some people are like in awful shape. You know what I'm saying?
Well, like
so
I said before,
you know,
like I said before, I mean, just to say that it was convenient to be in jail because you're writing about criminals, it's optimism. You know, you come out of 21 years in jail with this profound gratitude. It's amazing. Like, I mean, like it had to.
No,
inform...
I'm the type of dude, like, the glass is half full.
Sure.
The glass is not half empty. You know, and also I tell people all the time, like, look, I don't dwell on the past, man, because I see a ton of people, and you see it like with addiction, you know, violence, crime. People just focus on the past. They can't let it go. Like, whatever happened to them, you know, if it's a girl broke up to them, if they got 20 years in prison, you know, if something fucked up happened to them when there was a kid or whatever, and they hold on to it, they can't let it go, and that just fucks them up because they're always trying to escape. That's why a lot of people, you know, addicts and stuff, you go to drugs because, you know, whatever, this shit, you can't let it go. So I'm like the type of person, like, I only move forward. I don't think about the past. I don't want any negativity around me. You know, if somebody's negative, I tell them, you know, get the fuck out of here. I don't care if it's my wife. I'm saying, man, take that shit, you know. And I'm also a firm believer, like, when I only talk positive, you know, because I believe you manifest like what you talk. So I don't talk negative stuff. I don't talk negative. And I learned all that in prison, because when I was in prison, I saw all these fucked up people, right? Fucked up people, man. And I'm like, and looking at them and watching all these fucked up people coming in and out. You know how many people I saw in 21 years go in and out, you know, like 3-4 times on these little skid bids. And, and you know, they're just fucked up. And I, you know, after my first 5 years in prison, I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't want to be any of these people. So I'm only going to be positive. I'm going to push negativity. You know, like if I have a negative thought, I just change it in my mind into a positive thought, you know, because to me, it's all mindset and how you look at the world.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Thank you, man. Fucking awesome. And what do you think about the Dopey documentary for Netflix, man? You got to look into our story. I think it's a worthwhile story.
No,
to
I saw you. I saw you guys just did Jack Russell. That was cool.
Yeah. But I mean,
yeah,
dude. Fuck, I think he's sick too. I think something happened to him. I think I think he just got sick. But
and I didn't know you interviewed. All right.
What?
I didn't know you interviewed Nikki Sixx. That's cool. Nikki Sixx. Nikki Sixx is a big hero.
Curtis, Danny Trejo, fucking.
But I love Danny Trejo too.
That's only a little bit
Danny
of the
Trejo.
story. I have to educate you on the Dopey story, and we'll see what we can do. Some collaboration.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm open to listen.
Right on. Thank you, Seth. It's fucking crazy story, and I really appreciate your time, man.
All right. Appreciate you having me on, man.
I'm also psyched for Bicycle Day. Fucking, I mean,
that's good. Yeah,
we got to
that's
do
gonna
a
be
Dopey
big, man.
Bicycle Day thing. Or maybe this will be the Dopey Bicycle Day thing. Because it's coming up.
No, that event's gonna be awesome. So we got I'm gonna show basically the first 25 minutes of the film, basically like the first chapter in 9, 3 acts of film. It's gonna be 3 films, and then we're gonna have a panel discussion, and we got some like psychedelic luminaries, like some icons. We got Hamilton Morris is gonna be there, from Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia,
Sure.
and he's in my film. We got Leonard Picard, the Harvard educated chemist that had life and just recently got out during COVID. We got Roni Stanley, who was Bear Owsley's partner and the mother of one of his kids. Mark McLeod, who runs the Blotter Barn, in San Francisco. That's the Blotter Art Museum. We got Carolyn Mountain Girl Garcia, who was not only a merry prankster, but was married to Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. We got my boy Tim Tyler, who had life for LSD, and then he got a pardon from Obama and got out. So, and then
Sounds amazing.
The big psychedelic journalist, Madison Margolin is going to be there. Yeah, it's going to be awesome, man. It's going to be an event, and I'm just happy, man. I'm happy that all these elders, because these people like that I mentioned, especially the elders, I mean, they're like my heroes. They're the people. They've been my heroes like since the '80s when I was a teenager. They kind of made this culture, that I kind of fell into and was attracted to. So it's just amazing. Like I can call Mountain Girl on the phone. I mean, that to me, that is just the most amazing thing. Like I told people just the other night, I was talking to New Jersey Weed Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's like on the East Coast. He's fought a lot of battles for medical cannabis in New Jersey. So he's kind of like this celebrity figure. So I'm talking to New Jersey Weed Man, and as I'm talking to New Jersey Weed Man, Hamilton Morris is texting me, White Boy Rick is texting me, Saka Senor's texting me, Steve D'Angelo. So it's weird because we're all, not like we're actors or we're celebrities, but like, in the drug world, these people are all, some bigger names than others, but it's just crazy, man, how you, as you kind of rise and you form these relationships and you see all these other people, that have either been involved in the drug world or the criminal world or did time. And we're all kind of, coming up in the entertainment world, together and making our mark. And two, we're bringing the real stuff, man. We're not some writer from Columbia or Harvard who is just interested in stuff. Like we live this stuff. Like we are the authentic, people from this culture. So, and now they're just not telling the stories about us. Now we're telling the stories about ourselves and, our peers. So I think it's really crazy what's kind of happening now, with all these, ex-cons and drug world figures that are in the entertainment industry. That's what I say. I always tell people, I say, we're here to take over.
Nice. Count me in. Count me in the takeover. Fucking hell.
All right.
Love it. All right. Thanks, man.
All right.
So we say, I guess this is the fucking show. We say, stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. All right. Listen.
Stay strong. Stay strong, Dopey Nation.
Yes. And say fucking toodles for Chris, because Chris died doing the show.
Fucking toodles for Chris.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Seth. Fucking, there's a guy I know named Suave who was like in jail his whole life in Philly, and he has a show called Death by Incarceration. I should get you on his show.
Yeah. Hook me up, man. Hook me up.
And then there's these guys in Texas who are like, they're like weed dealers now, but they're making all this money on NFTs. They're called Dopehead NFTs, and it's all about nonviolent drug offenders, advocating for them. So I think I should hook you up with them too.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. Hey, that's what it's about, man. I know it's about who you know, man. You got to jump out there because I feel like the more relationships you have, the more people you know, the more opportunity you're going to have.
100%. I'm really interested in talking to Roni Stanley. Like she's somebody, I heard her on the good old Grateful Dead cast, and she's got a great voice, you know?
No, I can talk to her. I can talk to her for wait when like let me know when this comes out, and then I'll have her watch it. You know,
all right, cool.
I'm gonna be with her, but yeah, I can mention to her. I'm sure, because she has a book called Owsley and me, my LSD story.
I need to read
So,
the
you
book.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
she would love to do that and get more stuff out there. And plus, she could talk about the documentary too, because she's basically like my right hand person. Her and Tim Tyler are like my executive producers. They're the ones that give me the access, you know, to all these people, especially Roni. I mean, Roni goes back. I mean, she goes back to like the mid '60s. I mean, she was around the Grateful Dead when they were the Warlocks. You know, she was around the Merry Pranksters. I mean, they said like when Bear Owsley, you know, distributed, you know, dosed the whole Monterey Pop Festival, you know, with like 100,000 hits of acid. She made the acid with him. So I mean, she's been there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like an iconic and a wonderful, intelligent, strong woman. You know, I'm
cool.
so lucky to have her. Yeah, I'm so lucky to have her on this project with me. She's just provided so much access and, you know, making sure, you know, that the project is going the right direction, because she'll let me know if she doesn't like something. She will definitely let me know.
Is she from New York?
Yeah, she's New York. Yeah.
She sounds
Jewish.
like she's
She's Jewish.
Yeah, she's got a great
she's
vibe.
Jewish.
Yeah.
But you know, she went to Columbia, very educated.
Right.
You know, went to Columbia and then
I heard her
and
on
then went out.
On good old Grateful Dead cast. She's fucking great on there. Tell her I'm a big fan.
And
Tell her
gangster.
What's that?
And she's gangster, dude. She's like the consummate outlaw.
Okay.
You know, like still to this day, she's like, we don't fuck with snitches.
I love that.
You know, at 70 something years old, and she's like, we don't fuck with snitches.
Amazing. All right, dude, that was a long interview, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. You know, I could talk for hours, man.
Right.
You know?
Say what's up to Ryan when you go out there for me, please.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's picking me up at the airport tonight.
Oh, awesome. Say what's up.
Yeah, shout out Ryan Leone, man. Thanks for the hookup, man. And I'm glad I finally got to come on your show.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Thank you, Seth. So there you have it. Seth Ferranti. Long, amazing, outlaw, dopey episode. Thank you, Seth. Bicycle Day is just around the corner. I don't think we could have two more opposite sort of guests with my dad and Seth Ferranti. But we did it. I hope you guys had fun. Please write us at dopeypodcast@gmail.com. Send in emails, voicemails. Send it all in. It will get played. Look for a lot of shit to come out on Patreon with emails also. Thank you, guys. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's high noon where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. and it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had, and I want to call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever